We'll call this meeting together. This is a special joint meeting of the City Council and Planning Commission. And let's just do pledge allegiance. We'll lead off the pledge allegiance. Sergio, want to lead the pledge with us? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have roll call. I guess we'll start with City Council.
Okay, City Council, Councilmember Mendez. For Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Rue.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Mayor Dutray. And for the Planning Commission, Commissioner Johnson.
I'm here.
Commissioner Patel.
I'm here.
Commissioner Sagoon.
Present.
Vice Chair Sanchez.
Here.
And Chair Martinez. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I want to say for the commissioners, planning commissioners for being here. Appreciate that on behalf of the City Council. I know you guys do great work at that level. And thank you. We do have public comments for, obviously this is for non-agenda items. Comments on non-agenda items are not permitted at a special meeting, which this is a special meeting. So what we'll do is we're going to move public comments down to the council workshop, and if anybody has, members of the public want to address the presentations, we'll do it at that time after the presentations for comments. So we're going to go into the council workshop. Diane, I don't know if is there conflict of interest issues we should discuss right now, or do you prefer to wait later?
We can wait later till we get to that
Okay.
particular item.
All right, let's go ahead and start with the presentation, and I'm not sure who's leading off the staff, but Ed?
Mr. Mayor, we're gonna, given that he has put his heart and soul into this over the last year, longer than a year, several years, our Economic Development Agency Director, Mikey Fuentes, give him the honor to make the presentation, and he'll be introducing each of the representatives this evening with us who have provided special counseling and advice in drafting the ordinance and moving this issue forward. So, Mr. Fuentes, I believe you're online. I'm handing it over to you, sir.
Okay.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council and Planning Commissioners. Tonight, we'll be going over the proposed City of Montclair Commercial Cannabis Compliance Program. Next slide, please. First slide, yeah. And then just to go over, I wanted to introduce, we have special legal counsel here today. We have Mark Lovelace. He is a senior policy advisor for HDL. Jennifer Mizrahi, the special legal counsel from Cole Hubbard Attorneys, and then Marco Martinez, special legal counsel from Best and Krieger. So tonight we're going to provide a background and legislative history to show where we started, where we're currently at, and how the city intends to address the commercial cannabis compliance program that we'll be proposing to the Planning Commission and City Council for adoption at a future date. So just to give some background history, in 1996, the Compassionate Use Act was adopted, which legalized medical cannabis in the state of California. If you demonstrated that you had a medical need and you wanted to use cannabis as an alternative means to address your ailment that you may have. Back in 2004, the medical marijuana program was established that created identification cards and provided some additional scopes of clarity for the Compassionate Use Act. In 2015, the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act, MMRSA, was adopted to provide comprehensive regulatory framework for licensing, control, and taxation of all medical commercial cannabis related businesses that were operating in the state. Back in 2016, Proposition 64, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, was adopted, and which legalized recreational cannabis use statewide for all individuals 21 years and older, and allowed any individual 18 years and older to get or to use marijuana for medical purposes. In 2017, SB 94 was adopted, and that was the Medical and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, which created a regulatory framework for both medical and adult use cannabis. Prior to that, there was two different ways for two different regulatory structures This then created one unified code that required state licenses to be adopted in addition to having to have local permitting and licensing. Next slide. In 2017, the state created some emergency regulations, and these regulations were created in order to provide regulatory control for the emerging commercial cannabis businesses and activities that were allowed to occur as part of the passage of Proposition 64. It created 3 state agencies that divided the regulatory authority. One was the Bureau of Cannabis Control, which saw control over distribution, testing, retail, micro businesses. The Department of Food and Agricultural that looked at cultivation, and the Department of Public Health that addressed manufacturing. And each of these 3 different agencies would develop their own regulatory frameworks to address the specific commercial cannabis businesses that they oversaw. Um, as a result of the passage of Proposition 64 in 2017, the Montclair City Council adopted ordinance number 17-968, which explicitly prohibited all commercial activities in the city of Montclair. And as that occurred, several other cities also adopted prohibitions which said, we're not allowing for any commercial cannabis activities to occur in the city, in their respective jurisdictions, I should say. And as a result of that, the Bureau of Cannabis Control came out in 2019 and they adopted a new regulation, Title 16, Section 5416D, which basically said that if there was a commercial cannabis business that was operating in one jurisdiction, they could then deliver that cannabis product into a jurisdiction that had a ban on it. So in effect, the state basically said, those cities who do not want to allow commercial cannabis businesses in their cities, they're allowed to do that, but they cannot prevent legalized, licensed commercial cannabis business from delivering cannabis products into a city that prohibited the sale of cannabis. Next slide. As a result of that, and as a result of the state proposing a lot of legislation at the time back in 2019, there were some proposals that would have required every city in the state of California to allow for at least one commercial cannabis dispensary to occur in their city, as well as other legislation that tied the development of commercial cannabis dispensaries based off population. There was a proposal that required for every 10,000 people that lived in your jurisdiction, you would have to allow for one dispensary to occur, or at the minimum, allow one dispensary per jurisdiction. So because we were receiving that pressure from the state, staff elected to develop a commercial cannabis regulatory system. And so if you recall back in 2019, we had several workshops to go over the commercial cannabis ordinances. And we had called that the Medical and Adult Use Cannabis Regulations Safety Law of the City of Montclair, formerly known as McCurzel. That consisted of 3 different ordinances. The first ordinance, 19-982, dealt with the commercial cannabis activities. It established a comprehensive set of provisions for the regulation of both adult and medical cannabis businesses in the city of Montclair, and included all types of permits, including cultivation, distribution, transport, storage, manufacturing, processing, and the sale of cannabis goods. The following was ordinance number 19-983, that was the commercial cannabis use, and it established zoning and land use frameworks for commercial cannabis activities to occur in the city of Montclair. It had permitted zoning areas and included key separation requirements, including a 600-foot buffer from sensitive uses and a 100-foot buffer from other commercial cannabis activities of the same type. And then following, there was ordinance number 19-984, effects of secondhand smoke and restrictions on smoking tobacco products and cannabis products in workplace and public places. And that ordinance would have prohibited the smoking of cannabis and tobacco in all places of employment as well as in public locations, and prohibited cannabis everywhere in the city except for individuals who have the right to consume and smoke cannabis in their respective residence. We had those ordinances. We had several workshops that we had with both the Planning Commission and City Council. From the workshops, we did do a regulatory zoning map that was presented to the city, presented to the Planning Commission, excuse me. The Planning Commission did make the recommendation for the City Council to adopt that zoning map. But when we had further discussions with the city council felt that we should wait until the commercial cannabis industry matured a little bit more, until more regulations were developed, and just to let the industry mature to a level that the council felt comfortable allowing for commercial cannabis businesses to occur in the city. So following this, we put the recursal and the three ordinances on the bookshelf, and we waited to see what would occur as part of the state's continuing and evolving regulations towards the commercial cannabis industry. Next slide. In November of 2022, the city council had given direction to staff to look at developing a sales tax measure that would be voted on by the voters, and that would establish a cannabis business license tax that is known as Measure R. Measure R was brought to the voters in November of 2022. 70.22% of Montclair voters voted in favor of the cannabis business license tax, and the cannabis business license tax imposed a 7% gross receipts on all commercial cannabis business types. That was the maximum amount, and it also allowed the city council to change and lower the sales tax rate if they felt that it was too overburdening. So it provided some flexibility in that. In addition to Measure R going to the voters, Measure II, which was a cannabis legalization advisory measure, was presented to the voters, and the voters approved that 51.9%. And that basically asked the voters whether or not they would support the legalization of commercial cannabis businesses in their city. This was a follow-up to Proposition 64. Staff and the council wanted to see if the residents of the city of Montclair would still vote in favor of allowing for commercial cannabis businesses to occur, and that did in fact pass at a 51.91%. Next slide. So from the point of developing the sales tax measure back in 2022, staff was again directed by the city council to work on developing a commercial cannabis ordinance that would allow for commercial cannabis businesses to occur in the city of Montclair. As part of that, staff entered into an agreement with HDL for commercial cannabis services to help draft an ordinance, as well as to approve agreements for special legal counsel to provide services for commercial cannabis consulting. As part of that, staff developed a three-pronged regulatory approach. The first prong was developing business regulations, and that would be the commercial cannabis ordinance that we would be discussing today. That would create chapter 4.07, commercial cannabis activities in the Montclair Municipal Code, and that would address licensing and permit requirements for all commercial cannabis businesses, operating standards, conditions, and approvals, including security, odor control, hours of operation, management, local hiring practices. It requires compliance and enforcement procedures for local permits to be adopted as part of it. As part of that approach, staff was also looking and is proposing that the the commercial cannabis ordinance not have a cap on the number of commercial cannabis businesses coming into the city. It does allow, if the council feels that there is oversaturation, that the council can put a cap on the permitted types of cannabis businesses occurring in the city. Currently, right now, staff is proposing not to have a cap and to let the market dictate the amount of commercial cannabis businesses to operate in the city. Staff did conduct a economic analysis that HDL conducted, and it looked at the theoretical amount of businesses that could um, occur in the city based off of market conditions. And based on that study, it was found that the city of Montclair would realistically only house 4 to 5 dispensaries. And I say 4 to 5 dispensaries because primarily the commercial cannabis industry now has an abundant supply in terms of cultivation manufacturing. So what they're really looking at now is providing the actual retail shops for people to purchase cannabis. So that was what the study looked at, and that was the first prong that we were looking at in terms of addressing commercial cannabis in the city of Montclair. The second prong was the development of a commercial cannabis operating agreement, and the operating agreement would focus on business operations, safety compliance, accountability, and overall general welfare. This would be an operating agreement that each commercial cannabis business would have to enter into with the city of Montclair, similar to a development agreement. And each agreement would be specifically tailored to address the potential concerns and nuisances based off of each specific type of commercial cannabis business. For example, a dispensary would be required to have on-site security during hours of operation, whereas a testing facility, since they don't deal with large levels of cannabis, would not necessarily require one, but they would be tailored specific towards each type of use that would be allowed. And the operating agreement would also work to ensure that there is positive impacts from the commercial cannabis operations and provide a balance between economic benefits and public benefits for the city of Montclair. Next slide. And then the last prong is zoning regulations. So the city developed a commercial cannabis zoning overlay, which, if adopted, would become Chapter 11.11, the commercial cannabis overlay in the City of Montclair Municipal Code. And it would establish an overlay zone applied in combination with the underlying zoning existing, and it would designate areas throughout the city of Montclair that would allow for commercial cannabis to occur. Staff elected to split the city into North, Central, and South Montclair in order to provide areas where commercial cannabis businesses could operate, as well as the specific types of businesses that could operate and in what areas. And based off that, we basically created a 2-tier permitting activity that looked at allowing for an overlay zone that would allow for certain types to occur in North Montclair, recognizing that Central Montclair is primarily residential. We would not allow for any uses there. And looking at South Montclair, basically our industrial corridor, to allow for uses there. The zoning regulations also contain 600-foot separation buffers from schools and other sensitive uses from the areas where the zoning would be allowed. And we developed an eligible parcel list that's kept with the Montclair Planning Department to identify those specific parcels that would allow for commercial cannabis activities to occur. Next slide. And with that, I will now introduce Mark Lovelace to have a discussion related to the commercial cannabis ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, as Mark makes his way up to the podium, I just want to let you know that you may have heard in the news recently that Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche did sign an order that reclassified marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. That really does not mean a lot for us, but what it does do is eases the barriers for medical marijuana research, and it does provide a tax break to some medical marijuana operators. But other than that, don't read too much more into that decision by the administration to sign that executive order.
Your policy advisor for HDL companies. I've been with HDL for about 10 years now. By way of background, prior to that, I served 8 years on the Board of Supervisors for Humboldt County as we were looking at the impacts from coming legalization seeing that in the future. I appreciate the city manager's comment about the recent act regarding rescheduling specifically medical marijuana. It does not address adult use marijuana. The vast majority of businesses, cannabis businesses in California, are dual use, medicinal and adult use, and so it creates, at this point, it creates more confusion than clarity. So we'll have to wait and see how that evolves over time. So just a brief, excuse me, I guess I need to. There we go. So just a little bit of background about HDL. We are a municipal finance consulting firm. We serve only local government agencies. We work only with the public sector, and we have no private sector clients, and this includes in the cannabis industry. We recognize that cannabis is still, there's still strongly held values around cannabis, and so when we work with cities and counties on this issue, our goal is to remain agnostic about it and to provide you with the best information possible to support your decision-making process. Where you land with that is recognized is going to be unique to each community to find the best place to, the best fit. So just real briefly, for an overview of our discussion here today, I'll be providing just an overview of the draft cannabis regulatory ordinance that we've helped to develop for the city. Most of the ordinance is administrative, but I'll be drawing your attention to some of the major provisions that may be of the most interest to the council and to the planning commissioners. After which I'll gladly respond to any initial questions from the council or commission. But because of the multi-pronged regulatory approach, as was made clear in the previous presentation, I would suggest holding the public comment and the larger discussion until all the presentations have been completed, because it is a complex, multi-pronged issue. So a bit of brief background, and this was already gone over by Mr. Fuentes, but who noted Measure R and Measure II. So I don't think I need to go back over those. But I do want to address a little bit. In 2024, the city reached out to HDL to prepare a fiscal analysis, as was referenced in Mr. Fuentes' introduction, that would include projections for the amount of revenue that could potentially be generated from licensed cannabis businesses within the city. Our analysis included a map of all the licensed cannabis retailers within the general vicinity of Montclair. We've updated that for this presentation. The map you see is using data from the Department of Cannabis Control as of April. That data shows around 30 licensed cannabis businesses within roughly 30 miles of the city. So that would be the distance that we would consider basically striking distance for cannabis delivery services to make it economical for them to serve cannabis consumers within the city. That includes 4 storefront retailers in neighboring Pomona, which would all be within easy shopping distance for cannabis consumers in Montclair. Our research has found that where storefront cannabis retailers are available, that consumers far prefer to make their purchases on a walk-in basis, to drive to a location where they can go in and explore product and walk out with something that way. That most businesses that conduct sales by both storefront retail and delivery, the delivery accounts for only about 5 to 10% in most cases. So that suggests that we would imagine the vast majority of the business, that is cannabis purchases that are currently happening among consumers in the city of Montclair, are likely going to those 4 storefront retailers in Pomona, with some other portion, some smaller portion going to deliveries from other cities. But it also suggests that with that access, that nearby access, as well as the delivery services, that it's very likely that consumers within the city of Montclair are not finding it difficult to access cannabis. And so To that degree, we assume that anyone that is a cannabis consumer is likely already finding ways to obtain that for themselves. Our 2024 analysis estimated that retailers in the city could generate between $1.5 and $2.6 million in cannabis tax revenue for the city, depending upon the tax rate, an additional $750,000 from regular sales tax and the city's Measure-L transaction tax. I want to point out that that figure is a little on the high side because if you look at that map, other than the 4 retailers in Pomona, there are no cannabis retailers in Claremont, Upland, Ontario, or Chino, or Rancho Cucamonga. And so retailers in the city of Montclair would likely be the most accessible for consumers in those surrounding cities. And so you would capture a surplus of taxes from those sales.
Sir, could you repeat those projections?
It was between 1.5 million and 2.6 million in cannabis tax revenue, depending upon the rate. That was, I think 1.5 was at 4%, and 2.6 was at the 7% maximum rate. And in addition, the city would also collect around $750,000 in regular sales tax, from regular sales tax and from the city's Measure-L transaction tax.
Thank you, sir.
Following the fiscal analysis in February of 2025, the city asked that HDL begin drafting a cannabis regulatory ordinance. We've worked with your staff and with your special counsel, Jennifer Mizrahi, over the past year to develop this comprehensive regulatory approach that was described to you. That uses the regulatory ordinance as the overarching framework for licensing and regulating cannabis businesses. In addition, cannabis businesses must enter into the negotiated operating agreements. My presentation uses the word development agreements, more common term. I'd like to clarify that development agreement commonly applies to the actual development of the property. Operating agreement applies to the operator of the property, so that would be the proper term in this case. And that would be an agreement between the city and the operator. Each type of business is subject to zoning and land use regulations. In addition to that, that would limit where they can be located, establish minimum distances from sensitive uses and from each other to prevent overconcentration, and would also be subject to design standards and other development requirements, as with other businesses within the city. And lastly, the cannabis businesses would be subject to city's existing Measure R cannabis business tax that was approved by the voters in 2022. I do want to say, add one other quick note just about the interplay of the regulatory ordinance and the operating agreements. I suggest think of the regulatory ordinance as the floor. That is the ground floor of requirements below which the businesses cannot go. They have to meet all of those requirements. But broadly, with any type of business, we would always like to see people be better players. Yeah, that's just defining the floor. And so the operating agreement provides an opportunity for the business and the city to negotiate terms in addition to that ground level requirements to be able to be the best players they can be for your city to provide a good match for your community. So to run through some of the details of the ordinance, the draft ordinance adds Chapter 4.07, Commercial Cannabis Activity, to the city's municipal code. The ordinance includes detailed regulations for all types of cannabis businesses and provides to provide access to cannabis for medicinal purposes and for adults age 21, while protecting the health, safety, and welfare of city residents and enforcing regulations consistent with state law. The preamble to the ordinance also includes findings that the ordinance is exempt from CEQA under Section 15061B3. 30 definitions in the ordinance. I want to draw attention to just a couple of them. The ordinance defines an owner as any person with an aggregate ownership interest of 5% or more in the cannabis business, or who manages, directs, or controls the operations of the business. The 5% figure sets a strict but reasonable threshold to capture any person that has any reasonable amount of interest in the business, anything that might be considered a, you know, if not a controlling interest, at least a substantial interest. And that figure is not, 0.1 or 1% or it's something smaller, because it's very common for businesses, not only in the cannabis industry, but other types of businesses, to have LLCs, and that LLC may have separate LLCs as owners of portions of that. And trying to get down to zero becomes really goes down the rabbit hole. And so 5% is we believe, a very fair threshold to ensure that you're getting at anyone that has, again, a meaningful interest in that business, to make sure that they're being addressed within that. The ordinance also draws its definition of a youth center from the city's municipal code to provide greater clarity and consistency than exists in state law. The state law definition for a youth center, we have, in our experience with other clients around the state, it's been problematic. So we do believe that it's good to provide more clarity such as this. The ordinance requires each commercial cannabis business to obtain a cannabis business license, which is in lieu of the regular business license required for other types of businesses within the city. So if you had someone that's operating, say, just some other type of retail storefront or whatever, they still have to get a business license within the city. This is a separate track. They don't have to get both of those business license types. Each business is also required to obtain a state license from the DCC, which is as required under state law. The dual licensing is a fundamental aspect of the state's regulatory program. All owners, managers, and employees are required to pass background checks to ensure that they're not prohibited from holding a cannabis business license under either state or local law. A little more detail, the ordinance prohibits a person from holding a license, back to the background check piece, if they've ever had a cannabis license denied, suspended, or revoked by another city, if they've not paid their taxes, or if they're otherwise in violation of city codes. It also prohibits any elected or appointed city official or employee from having any ownership interest in a cannabis business licensed by the city, or from lobbying or attempting to influence the issuance, suspension, or revocation of a cannabis license. It includes a revolving door prohibition that restricts any former city council or city official or employee from doing so for a period of 1 year after leaving their position with the city. And lastly, the ordinance also establishes processes for resolving any conflicts of interest should a city official or employee acquire an interest through a licensed owner becoming incapacitated. Ordinance allows all types of cannabis businesses that are defined by the state, except for outdoor or mixed light cultivation, which are prohibited. The only way that they would be allowed would be by amendment to the ordinance if the city chose to consider that in the future. It's most common that cities only allow indoor cultivation because it's, unless they have a large amount of agricultural land surrounding them, which is not the case here. The ordinance does not place as a numerical cap on the number of cannabis businesses, but it does allow that the city can choose to place numerical limits on the number of any type of cannabis business by resolution at any time as it sees fit. So if over time the city council were to be concerned with the proliferation of businesses of any particular type or in general, the council could, by resolution, not having to amend the ordinance itself, would be able to set a cap if needed. But the ordinance, as described in the introduction, and we'll be getting into that a little bit more, provides quite a number of ways that the number of businesses would be limited through land use zoning and just the economics of the industry. The ordinance requires that businesses to enter into a operating agreement with the city, as mentioned before, which can include additional community benefits that are being offered by the business. These kinds of benefits may include additional revenues to the city or revenues for community organizations. They can include in-kind donations, volunteer hours for their staff, sponsorship of community events. In working with cities around the state, we found a wide variety of ways that businesses like to give back to their community. The cannabis industry is, as you know, highly regulated in California. The costs for getting into this industry are very high. The taxes are very high. The regulatory burden is very high. They have a lot on the line, and they generally tend to try to be very good community members, has been our experience. Any benefits that they do offer up within their application process would become binding conditions of the business license as a part of that operating agreement. Application process and guidelines would be developed after the ordinance adoption and would be adopted by resolution. This would include an objective checklist of all the things that the council wants to see addressed within that. HDL and our working with our clients, we recommend that the application process be separated out from the ordinance because that provides greater flexibility over time. Oftentimes, when cities are first allowing cannabis businesses, they're taking a much more skeptical approach, perhaps, towards them, and the process might be more complex and burdensome. And over time, some cities have chosen to relax that a little bit. So by creating that application process separate, as an addition to the process, it allows, again, the city has the flexibility to adjust that as they see fit down the line. And all costs for that application process would be paid by the cannabis businesses. The initial term of a cannabis business license would be 12 months, and the business must begin operations within that time. Once the business is open, the license would be considered abandoned if the business ceases operation for a period of 4 months or more. And the license must be renewed annually for consecutive one-year terms and may be suspended or revoked for any violations. The ordinance defines an appeal process in case a business disagrees with the city's determination to deny, suspend, or revoke a license. In such case, any appeal would be heard by the city manager or by an appointed hearing officer. The decision would be final with no further appeal, though the business at that point would have exhausted their administrative remedies and can seek redress through the courts. Section 300 of the ordinance is where we start getting into the nitty-gritty of some of the land use requirements, security measures, and other things. A cannabis business license is only a license to operate a cannabis business. It's not a land use permit. So those are two separate pieces of the puzzle here. The business must still obtain all necessary permits from the city and from other agencies and must meet all zoning requirements. That includes being not less than 600 feet from any designated sensitive use, which includes K-12 schools or any youth center or daycare center. The land use portion also prescribes a list of security measures, some of which mimic or restate existing state law, and others which go beyond. I won't go through each one of these one by one, but they are designed to ensure that the businesses are protected, that they're resistant and less attractive to crime. The ordinance requires that licensed security guards be on the premises of all cannabis retailers on site from 1 hour before opening to 1 hour after closing. And essentially that's any time that employees are on site or that people may be coming or going from the business. It also requires a designated security contact person who's available 24 hours a day in case there are any issues. Other things just of note in here, the professionally installed security alarm systems, 24-hour surveillance cameras with a 90-day video retention. The alarm systems need to be monitored 24 hours a day. And so they are very secure business models. And we have heard from law enforcement in some of the cities that we've worked with that due to some of the security requirements that are put in place, that they can actually create increased security for surrounding businesses too, just because of the level of monitoring. A few general operating requirements, oops, excuse me, catch up here, that apply to all cannabis businesses. There are no on-site cannabis consumptions allowed unless specifically permitted by the city. There's often a lot of discussion about cannabis consumption lounges is a term that gets bandied about a lot. It's not something that's defined within state law, so that would be something that if the city chose to allow that as a use in the future, the city would have to have an additional discussion about exactly what they want that to mean and what kinds of restrictions they want to place upon it. Cannabis cannot be visible from the exterior of the facility. So that means that if it's a indoor cultivation facility or manufacturer, distributor, something like that, passersby cannot, look and see a, rolled up garage door or whatever with a lot of cannabis visible to them. Retailers cannot have windows facing the street where cannabis can be seen by passersby. These are very important security measures. In the case of retailers, again, our experience providing security inspections, compliance inspections of cannabis businesses and retailers that are up and running, we found that to be a significant factor in their attractiveness to crime. So just having, again, nothing that can be visible to the outside can be a big piece of making these more secure facilities. There's also limitations on signage and advertising. There are odor control measures and prohibition on any loitering around the property. These are some requirements that are specific to storefront retailers. They're only allowed to operate between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Under state law, they can operate from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. We think this is a very reasonable set of hours. We found that even though businesses in some places where they are allowed to operate until 10 p.m., very few cannabis retailers choose to stay open that late. For the most part, sales tend to really drop off after about 7 o'clock at night, except perhaps on Saturdays and Sundays when it may go to 8 or 9 o'clock. But very, very few businesses that we've found that voluntarily choose to stay open until 10 o'clock. The business must verify the age of each customer before they're allowed to access the retail area, which is state law. No drive-through sales are allowed. This is something that recently is in the process of changing under state law. The city still has the ability to prevent that. So this is something that reflects state law at the time we were developing the ordinance. But if the city chose to change that, that is something that, again, is changing under state law, but we think until that's a little better established, this is probably a good place to land. And some of these other measures were already discussed under the security measures. For retail delivery requirements, non-storefront retail delivery services that are located outside of the city would be required to obtain a regular city business license. The city can't subject them to this cannabis business license because they're not principally permitted within the business or within the city. It's not their primary base of operations. But just as you would require, say, a food truck that parks in the city of Claremont or whatever overnight, if they wanted to operate within the city, they'd have to get a regular business permit for that kind of purpose. So would cannabis businesses operating from outside the city. They would also be subject to the city's cannabis tax. And those deliveries would also be limited to the same hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the delivery businesses must also identify all vehicles that are going to be used for deliveries. They have to carry proof of insurance and there's other requirements for securing the cannabis within the vehicle if they're going to be used for that purpose. The ordinance lists specific requirements for other allowable cannabis business types. It includes reserved sections for on-site cannabis consumption if the city chose to explore that in the future. and also a reserved section for cannabis events if the city chose to allow those in the future. Those are really activities that seem to capture the imagination more than reality. For the amount of conversation that we have oftentimes in discussion with cities versus the very few incidents of either of those types of businesses that occur around the state. So that's why we suggest just deferring those for future discussion if the city were to choose to want to explore that in the future. And lastly, some of the administrative provisions. The ordinance includes a number of standard administrative provisions to allow the city manager to develop rules and procedures as necessary to carry out the ordinance. Any ordinance is a framework, but there will always be details to be determined about, little small pieces and that can be adjusted as necessary just for implementation. The business must also provide a designated community contact person in case any issues arise that need to be addressed, so that the city knows who to contact and who to reach out to so they don't get passed around from one person to another. The city also has the right to enter the property without notice to conduct inspections as needed as a part of this process. Most businesses, as mentioned before, do have a lot invested in that business license and in their operations, and are trying to be good operators. There are those that aren't, and we have experience with both kinds, and so it is important that the city have that ability to inspect and to be able to inspect as the city sees fit rather than only by appointment to make sure that you're getting a proper view of the operations. So that concludes my brief overview of the ordinance. As noted, I'd be happy to answer if there's any questions that are specific to the ordinance at this time, or to wait for questions after the rest of the presentations.
Let's take a break here for a second. We'll stop and try to take some questions this time. Before we go on to the next two presentations, one is obviously regarding the operating agreement, which is the Crucial Park, and of course, the last one will be the zoning. But let me ask my plant commissioners first, who are here. Maybe I'll start with Manny on this side here first. I don't have any questions on my left with Manny.
Regarding the retail businesses and their ability to get the product to customers, can services like Instacart or Uber pickup or something go to the retail place, pick up an order, and deliver it to our customers here?
No. Anyone that wants to handle cannabis in any commercial manner, anyone other than the end user, the purchaser, has to be a licensed cannabis business. Now, it's certainly possible that someone could have a cannabis delivery service that's licensed by the state and by the city, and also operate as another business, but they cannot merge those. They cannot be conducting both types of business at the same time. It has to be one business or the other.
Thank you.
Anybody else here? How about, no? Anybody on this side? Jaso, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question in regards
Oh.
to the retail delivery.
Mhm.
Are they only allowed to deliver to a residence, or can they place a business? Where can they meet for transaction, I guess, to be?
They cannot deliver to any public property. They can't deliver to a city facility or park or anything of that sort. They can deliver to private residences, as noted. They can also deliver to a private business if the business allows it. And so, just as say a hotel may be able to allow, may choose to allow Instacart or some other sort of food delivery service like that, they can also choose whether or not to allow cannabis retailers to deliver to people within there. In some cases, it may be that the person has to go outside to the parking lot or something like that, but that becomes a private matter for the private business to determine.
Thank you.
Okay, Denise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I have is about where people can consume cannabis. Over some years, we've heard about people sometimes here in town or in other cities where people are saying, well, it's just a place for them to be well and they can consume cannabis on that site. Are we entertaining that or no?
For the
Well,
on-site consumption,
Yes.
that is not a part of the ordinance as it's currently constituted. As noted, there's a placeholder section in there for if the city chose to allow that in the future. Um, it's a bit of an aside, but I've done a lot of research on cannabis consumption lounges, and the one thing they, like I said, they capture the imagination. There's a lot of articles about consumption lounges and the idea of it, but the one thing that does not seem to exist under current law for consumption lounge is any economic model for them, because a consumption lounge cannot sell food, cannot sell alcohol. They're still subject to California smoke-free workplace requirements, and so you can't have, performances and things like that within that space. Um, and so basically, if you already have a cannabis retailer where someone's coming to buy their cannabis, it now becomes an outlay, a significant outlay for the business to now operate this additional space for people to hang out and smoke if there's no additional revenue stream from that. There's a number of different places, ways that businesses are trying to figure out how to make that economic. But as of yet, I have not heard of one that seems to, gelled into like one cohesive model for how to make this all work. Until cannabis businesses can conduct, get revenue from other streams, I don't think it's really going to be as much of an issue as it is made out to be by the press. And just to clarify, the only things that a cannabis business can sell currently are cannabis, cannabis products, cannabis accessories such as pipes, papers, whatever, batteries or whatever for vapes, and branded merchandise. But they can't sell, you can't have a store that's a cannabis store and another kind of store that sells other things.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace. I do have one more question. It's probably minor, but I'm just curious. So
Can you speak in the mic, please?
sorry,
Because
let me
hard.
see if I can get it.
Or move it to your, there you
There,
go.
is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So my other question, many years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, someone told me that there was a cannabis dispensary that was close by, and I really didn't believe them. So I went there to check it out myself, and yeah, that's where it was. But the thing that was unsettling to me is it was almost like a prison, like you have to go a certain place and fill out this thing. And my husband told me it was a good thing that I couldn't see over the counter because there were guns all over the counter. And then you have to unlock a door for you to go in, and it was just really icky. That's the best word I can say for it. But I've seen some other examples of cannabis dispensaries that look more like a hotel lobby. So do we have some framework about what the design should be?
The city would have the ability to impose design standards, and just as it would with any other type of business. And this would be one of the places that we think the operating agreement would probably come into play also. Cannabis businesses are competitive. They are, in places where they have, a number of businesses. They're all basically competing for a slice of the pie. Again, they don't have any other revenue streams that they can reach out for. The only thing that they can sell is those three things: cannabis, cannabis products, branded merchandise. And so, it creates a very limited market that they're all going to compete for. And so with that, there are some businesses that have, a term that gets put out there a lot, you said like a hotel lobby. Others have said like an Apple store. There's a very clean, high-tech kind of look to them. There are others that are just like a little mom and pop, liquor store or mini market kind of thing. It really can vary depending upon the size of the business, the ownership, how well financed it is, and on the city's desire to impose design requirements upon that. The model that you were talking about, the business, I have no idea if this was a licensed business or a unlicensed or anything of that sort, but there is a place where there's kind of a competing interest both in wanting to ensure the security of the business while not having it look like, not having it look like a real sketchy uh, place like that. As I mentioned, some of the security measures that we've talked about and others that aren't included within this try to address that so that, like, if there are bars on the windows, they cannot be on the outside of it. They'd have to be on the inside. We've seen places where businesses meeting that would do like bars on the inside, and then they cover the window on the inside too, so no one sees them. It's now completely secure, but no one's going to see the bars from either inside or outside the building. There's a lot of ways that they can try to address this, but again, the city would have the ability to, to exert design standards and other factors to make sure that the business is a good fit for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace. You've answered my questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, Council, now I just have one question. This proposed ordinance you spoke of, any of the local cities are using this using this ordinance or pretty close to this ordinance?
Yes, HDL has assisted. I don't have a firm number, but I believe it's somewhere around 47 counties and cities
Are
with
using
developed
this
ordinances.
kind of this model?
We've been doing this since I think the first ones that we drafted were in 2017.
Okay.
And each one is evolutionary. We learn from each city that we work with. We learn over time with what worked and what didn't.
Okay.
And so with this being the one I'm presenting to you today, I can tell you this is the latest and greatest version of the ordinance that we've worked on. I will say also that this has been a much more not compatible, what's the term I'm looking for? The process of working with the city, with Jennifer, there's been a lot more interplay of all three parties. Some cities basically just say, hey, just write something up, bring it to us. That has not been the case.
Okay.
We've been very busy over the last year
Great.
working on
City of Pomona, City of Jurupa Valley, are they using this? Moreno Valley, this ordinance?
Pomona's ordinance, do I recall correctly that that was through an initiative?
BB&K, okay.
All right.
All right. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem
Mr.
Martinez.
Mayor, I had a question before you guys.
All right, go ahead.
It was regarding the cultivation by individuals in their home for their private use. I didn't hear anything on that.
This is a commercial cannabis ordinance, and so it's only addressing businesses that would be licensed. Under California law, a person is allowed to grow up to honestly, that's not my area of expertise. Now I can't even remember if it's changed. At one point it was 3 plants, and then it was square footage, and but that's just not my area of expertise on it. But
That won't affect that then.
But the city cannot require a person to obtain a license. They can require them to have to meet certain standards. But this is again for a business license.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
This may be a hypothetical question, but you shared with us in terms of revenue, potential revenue that the city may generate, but in your experience with the cities you've dealt with, have you done any studies regarding potential crime you may bring in the cost of it?
Our experience, and I'm always hesitant to respond to this question, especially if I've not been asked to do a specific crime analysis of some kind for a city. Generally, what we do is we suggest that the city defer to your chief of police, ask them to speak to their colleagues in other cities nearby that do allow for licensed cannabis businesses and see what their experience has been. We do provide, as noted before, we do conduct compliance inspections and revenue audits of cannabis businesses, and both our audit team and our compliance team have both suggested that the vast majority of players they work with, again, they have a lot of money on the line. They want to protect that permit, that license, and so they're trying to be good players. But they're not all good players. There are exceptions out there. And the bigger issue as far as crime related to cannabis businesses generally tends to be crime upon them, which is why we talk about the security measures to make sure that they're not attractive to crime and that the facilities are hardened without looking like a jail, as noted before. to make them resistant to crime. But again, these are generalities, and I would really encourage if the city wanted more information on that, that I would defer to your chief of police to inquire of his or her colleagues.
Okay, I just want to recognize that your chairman, Martinez, is gone. I suspect he went over to Monte Vista to do his other job on the water board, but we'll start off with Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Thank you. So in considering the odor control measures, I distracted myself by thinking about the perfect solution, which is to bring an In-N-Out next door. But as I was distracted,
Or a
you
KFC.
probably you probably answered this, but who would be doing the remote video monitoring during the non-operational hours? Would that be the business owner?
That would be a private security firm.
Okay.
And there are firms where, with the security cameras during off hours when there's no one on facility, is someone who's, they're not monitoring that one business solely. They probably are monitoring, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 businesses that they have monitors set up, and they're, checking them. I don't really know how that works on the private end of, the private security businesses.
And you
But-
mean immediately adjacent to the cannabis business?
No, it'd be a firm that has, where all
I see what you
all
mean.
the
Okay,
cameras
the
are going
professional.
back to a central facility that it has contracts to provide this monitoring service for any number of businesses. It's not unique to cannabis businesses. There's a lot of places that have that to where their facility is being monitored when no one's on site.
Okay. And then relating to those areas that might have like the cultivation, manufacturing, is the security going to be like vault level security, not glass windows someone could easily break into?
Well, it's not like when you say vault level, like it's not going to be a Mission Impossible kind of movie about trying to get into it or whatever. But
But
they are
something more
required.
secure than just a door.
Yeah,
I would
they are required to have industrial locks. They're required to have key cards so that only people that have permission to enter the property are allowed to can get their way in there. No one who is not a employee of the business is allowed for the non-retail businesses. You can't go in unless you're an employee or if you have official business such as inspecting on behalf of the city, something like that. And the city, again, would have a lot of different standards within the ordinance that address the details of those security standards to make it. It also gets into the signage issue to make it so that the businesses are not, advertising their location when people aren't allowed in there. Oftentimes, businesses, that maybe even a cultivation business, an indoor cultivation business, might be so low key that someone 2 doors down doesn't even realize that's what's going on in there.
Especially if we have that In-N-Out next door.
There you go. They're much more interested in that. Yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Mendez.
Yeah, just a few questions. One to help answer Corey's. I do some contract work in Lake Elsinore and with water and sewer, and they have done quite a few cannabis ordinances in stores. And I just go in just to see just how they're operating. I do not use the product, just so you know. Don't have a problem with it, but don't use it. But most of those, they all put anything that's of value or product away in safes or back rooms. So that kind of stuff is not left out usually in the site, and I'm sure they put all their money away, whatever they have. But just to kind of give you some info. Going back to my questions on, I think it was slide 5 or 6, you were talking about delivery being 5 to 10%. Is this tax subject to the city that it's delivered to, or does that still go to the city?
Delivery gets to be a very, very complex tax issue because if you have, say, if you had a business located in Pomona that was delivering into, if Montclair went forward with this and, well, you had the ordinance, the tax ordinance, that a business that's delivering in one city that has licensed businesses and a cannabis tax and is delivering into another city that also has a cannabis tax, both cities have a claim on that sale. So it becomes subject to apportionment, which is not unique to cannabis sales. It's the same thing applies broadly to sales between jurisdictions, including interstate commerce. And so typically the way that's approached is to say that the vast majority of the activity related to that sale is happening in the city of origin, where they have their facility, their warehouse, their employees, their point of sale system, where the vehicles are parked, all of that. They have a much higher percentage of the activity is happening there. The only thing that's happening in the destination city is the exchange of the cannabis for money. And so it's very often common to have like something where, say, 80% of the value of the sale goes to the city of origin, 20% goes to the city of destination. This becomes a matter for the finance director of each city to determine as a matter of apportionment. So with that, there are some cities that we've worked with that have suggested that the only thing they want to allow is sales by delivery, because they're concerned about the effect of the visual effect of having storefront retailers or whatever. But it does become a much more difficult matter as far as the collection of that the revenue. When you have the other thing would be if you have a business delivering into the city of Montclair, even though you have a claim to a portion of the tax revenue from that, the ability to
know about it.
Yeah, you don't have any ability to audit the business. We have, with a number of cities, worked to identify all the cannabis businesses that advertise on Weed Maps, Leafly, Google, wherever else that they deliver into the city. We also map them out and look at any within, again, like about a 30-mile or 30-minute radius, and search each of their websites to see if they advertise delivery. Most of them have a thing where you can enter your address and say, yes, we deliver. We then provide that evidence and the information for the business, their contact information, address, all of that, license number, to the city so that they can then notify them, let them know that they're subject to the tax. In those
So it
cases,
sounds like quite a bit of stuff that we'll have to go through to.
it's
I
not.
mean, they have to really go through, and we'll still get most of the tax, I feel like.
Yeah, the retail,
Alright.
the storefront retail is really where it's at again. Even with when I mentioned that of businesses that provide both storefront and delivery, that they tend to be only 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
It's also only a small subset of storefront retailers that, even though they're allowed by the state to deliver, I'd say most of them don't.
Okay.
I don't have a firm number on it, but it hasn't been as profitable of a line of business as some of them may have thought at first.
All right, I appreciate that. On slide 8, we talked about the youth center means a facility operated by the city of Montclair, but I don't see our youth center on the sensitive uses separation map where it would give us that area. So I didn't know if we needed to add that to that map on there to know that we can't be within 600 feet of that area. On the backgrounds that you guys are requiring, or we're going to require that all owners, managers, employees are required to pass background checks. What type of background is this? You don't have to give me like major detail, but just how long do these type of backgrounds check take? Is it just that simple? You put your fingerprints and they just do a quick one like that, and then so that way the police is, I guess, knows who's working there. Or?
There's the regular live scan background check, which it shows certain things that would be, for like if a person has a previous felony or something like that. There's a certain standard for live scan. HDL does also provide as a service background checks that are more specific to the cannabis industry, where we do actually look for the things that are relative to it, like has this business owner been associated with another business that has had a license revoked or something, because that, may not show up on a regular live scan.
Okay, so a simple background check like a live scan is what they would end up doing?
It's something, that either that or, again, the one that's specific to cannabis. And either one is pretty quick.
Pretty quick.
Takes, like a
Couple
week, I
days,
believe.
yeah.
If that.
Okay.
Or-
Tell me what mixed light cultivation is. I don't know why I don't know what that is, but.
Under state law, there are three primary types of cultivation. One is outdoor cultivation, which is
Yeah, I understand
uses
that one.
no
Mixed light, that's
yeah,
right, yeah.
uses no artificial light. Indoor that uses no natural light, can't even have windows to the facility. And mixed light may be indoors in like a greenhouse, but it can't have any supplemental light. So there are some that, but it would also have supplemental light, excuse me. So they'd have any combination of natural light and artificial light. And they do that so that they can have basically more hours of sunlight to expand the growing season
Okay.
for the cannabis.
On slide 12, we talk about application process and including community benefits. Just wondering, I know we have to have these facilities update their licenses annually and their permits annually. Does this also require the community benefits component to be updated annually so they can change it if they want? Like maybe one year they're donating to the Little League, the next year they're donating to something else. So that's part of that process also, I'm assuming?
I would defer that to Jennifer when she
Okay.
provide
wait,
her
I can-
presentation next and
Okay.
answer it now.
Under licensed security guards on site, from 1 hour before opening to 1 hour after closing, for storefront retailers, is there a certain amount, like per square footage of the building? You gotta have two, or, I mean, is it just required to have one security guard?
It's just one.
It's just one, okay.
Yeah. There have been some cities that we've worked with that have required more than one security guard, or that have required them to be on site 24 hours a day. Some have chosen to allow security guards to be armed, most do not. So there are, that's something that is, each city gets to weigh in on that a little bit as they see fit.
And will that be the same, like if we can require that they're in a security uniform so that we can tell who they are, or are they undercover, or?
And they need to be licensed by the Bureau of Security and Investigative Services,
Okay.
for one. And they need to be identified as a security guard, whether that means the full, semi-law enforcement type of security guard uniform or just something that says security.
Okay.
Varies.
And then, obviously, a hydroponic store doesn't fall under this type of an ordinance. They're just a supplier of materials and equipment used in growing, usually for people that do it at home or whatever. Last thing, I guess, were police and code enforcement departments, did they have time to help consult with this or time to review this and maybe come up with their own questions? Do we have them do any of that, Ed?
No, they were not involved in the process as far as drafting the ordinance. But as we go forward and develop operating requirements, we'll be bringing planning as well as other departments into that process.
Okay, I just kind of going off Krishna Patel's question, just a crime analysis to it so that we kind of know where we're at. And then I'm sure that the chief probably talks to other chiefs in the county, which would probably make it, a little easier since a lot of them have to deal with this. That is all I have. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, any of my other council colleagues have a question? If not.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have a few questions.
Okay, go ahead.
I started off with just two. Based on your replies, I have to ask some more. Just a general question. About how much of a percentage of weight did you give to the drafting of this ordinance in your position? How much of this was your input, your directive?
Um,
50%,
It's a-
half of it, all of it?
I'd say the, the majority of this, the vast majority of this is, evolutionary from what HDL has developed working with a lot of other cities. But I will say that in the years that I've been doing this with HDL, I don't think I've had as much of a collaborative process as I've had with your city staff and with Jennifer on this.
Okay.
So trying to figure out time-wise, would be one factor as far as how many words were from HDL versus provided by the city or from Jennifer. That would be a different measure. If I could just follow up, I will say that every single part of this, though, has been gone over by all three parties.
The issue regarding youth centers, it's only a definition that applies to city-owned property or entities, entities and property for that matter. I know we haven't gotten to the map yet, and I'll touch on this again when we get to the map. But what about churches that operate youth groups? Most of them do. They have, well, one church here has Tuesday night services. I don't know what Our Lady of Lourdes has. Bethany Baptist has Sunday services, Wednesday services, where they have youth components to their function, and there's youth on their properties. And if you said that the hours are 9 to 9, they function within those hours on any given day. So have we just basically said they're irrelevant with the church areas and therefore they're excluded from these sensitive use separation buffer zones?
Well, for starters, I would note that this is a draft ordinance for your consideration. And so the council and the planning commission, members of the public, all, of course, have an opportunity to weigh in to modify this as they see fit, or as the council sees fit ultimately, obviously. But one of the things that we have encountered in the past when relying only on the state's definition has been a lack of clarity. This is very clear, but it's also much more limited in that way, as you were noting. But there have been cases where, such as one that I recall of a martial arts studio that includes, among the things they do, classes for kids, under 18. But those classes are like, 2 hours a day, 2 days a week, something like that. Does that mean that that is a youth facility? And the business was arguing that it was. The cannabis business was arguing that it's not, but it was not well defined under state law. And so it became, a complex issue. So if the council wishes to add in other, types of facilities as sensitive uses, whether as a youth facility or saying houses of worship, some cities have chosen to do that, to include houses of worship or city parks or whatever else. The city, of course, has the ability to do that. It does create further restrictions on where the businesses may or not be able to locate. And we have had experience of where a city is trying to take a very restrictive approach at the start, identifying everything that could possibly be considered a sensitive use, and then saying 600 feet isn't enough, we want 1,000 feet from that. And next thing you know, there is not one site available within the entire city. So it is up to the council to be able to decide what you think is the best fit and, for your city. This is something that we were in discussion, thought we'd bring as a starting point because it provides that type of clarity as to what is and is not considered a youth facility.
And I understand that we're very limited in land territorially for our city. We're relatively small in comparison to our neighbors, so I understand that the more exempted areas that we include would absolutely prevent the establishment of businesses. I understand that. And I know that a few of those churches I mentioned are in the the prohibited area, so I know that some of them are, but nonetheless, believe there's another one up in the north that is pretty close to the green area on the map, which it would be allowed. So I just had a concern about that. I'm going to get into the community benefits issue, I guess, when we get later into the presentation. But I do have some concerns regarding the processes on that. This may not be a question to you, and I'm only bringing it up because you referenced it in your presentation and you commented on it. But you stated in your 18th slide, slide 18, that there's limitations on signage and advertising. And I wrote here in my chicken scratch, what limitations? And are these limitations to be more stringent than other businesses? Before you answer, you said something, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm trying to write them and keep up with what you were saying. That you want to make sure, or we want to make sure there's no advertising during hours that they aren't open or they shouldn't be in business. So are you saying then that a cannabis establishment cannot advertise past 9 p.m. if that was the cutoff hours for their operation?
If that's the way the words came out of my mouth, I'm sorry, because it's not a prohibition on the hours of
I
advertising.
was going to say, because a sign can't be taken down.
Yeah, perhaps a lit sign, could be, turn on or off, that kind of thing. Mostly the signage limitations are, some cities say they do not want, any pot leaf signs, from the outside. The business can say, cannabis retailer or whatever like that, but can't have a big old pot leaf sign. It can't use,
The
signage.
insignia.
Yeah, or
I get it.
signage that might be attractive to, to kids.
I get it.
Such as on the product itself. Another place that this also applies is on the ability to advertise the existence of the business. Some cities choose to disallow cannabis businesses from advertising on any billboards within the city.
We don't have any.
Which, yes, then that's not an issue apparently. But it gets into a thing where one city I was working with, that the entire reason that they wanted to look at allowing cannabis businesses was because of their location along a major freeway thoroughfare. Meant that they thought they could capture a lot of sales from people, going this distance from this point to this point, and there's nothing else in between. But the ability to capture those sales depended upon the ability for passing motorists to know that the businesses are there. And so they were stuck with that conundrum of, which of these things is, how do we balance these two considerations?
And that's exactly what I was going to get at, is even though let's hypothetically say we adopted the 9 to 9 hours or whatever it was. I believe it was 9 to 9?
Yeah.
Yeah, 9 to 9 hours. Families are not families, individuals that are driving through past 9 o'clock that don't know that there is a cannabis establishment now. We need those businesses to be able to advertise past the hours of operation, so that way when they are open, they know where to go. So I was interpreting your comments as saying that we would not be allowing that. If you can give me the assurance that that's not the case, then I can see that, go ahead.
Not the case. There's not a limitation on the ability to advertise by hours. I mean, I suppose the city would have the ability, if it wanted to impose something. I'm not sure what form that would take, though, because does that mean they can't do any radio advertising or whatever, which is, gets into, the ability to, if they're advertising on a radio station that's based outside the city. I mean, I'm not even sure how that would work to be able to impose a limitation on the hours of advertising, other than perhaps an actual sign on the physical location of the business, whether if it has a light that says cannabis store, that has to be turned off at 9 o'clock.
Well, I mean, I've always taken the position that unfortunately we're one of the cities that are a little bit too restrictive in letting our businesses advertise as they should or could. But hey, I'm one man on this council, so let's go back to delivery companies. And I think you answered some of my questions when my colleague, Mr. Mendez, brought them up, but let's bring up weed maps. So one, let me back up and say that I don't believe, it's my opinion, that the proposition that was submitted to the voters ever discussed delivery companies at all. When they cast their vote, they were talking about establishments within the city that are like brick and mortar type businesses or out of a warehouse. And that's the message that was conveyed to them. We did not address delivery companies in the language and the campaign of that from 4 years ago at all. So I'm kind of a little bit upset that Weed Maps is even in this conversation. I know that they are undermining, they have the potential, but it's capitalism. Hey, that's the structure of our society. They have the potential to, of course, take away money from brick and mortar businesses. That's fine. And that shouldn't be something that we should even delve into. But how are we, you stated that they cannot deliver to parks, let's say, but how is that going to be enforced, and then who's going to enforce that?
And there is a lot of that is difficult, to enforce, whether
So why include it?
the way that would be enforced obviously would be if, happenstance, frankly, if law enforcement happened to see an exchange happening on a street corner or something like that, that is not at a private residence, that is in a public place such as that, they'd be able to intervene just as with, some other type of disallowed activity occurring in public. But it's not something that would be reported in a way that, that the business would be able to, that it would come back to the city that, here's a list of all the places we've delivered to. It's delivery to the person, to the address would be out there, and I suppose that might be a way that could be followed up on. I can follow up with our compliance team on that piece. I'm afraid I don't have the best answer for you as I sit here today. We do have a broad team with HDL that specialize in compliance, specialize in audits, specialize in policy, specialize in application works, in the background checks, all of these different pieces. And that's something that I would have to double check with someone about how that is actionable, how that would actually work.
Well, I think that flies a little bit afoul to the presentation that what Mr. Fuentes presented to us just a little bit ago, and I'm going to read the bullet point on his third slide. It says, confirm that local governments had no authority to ban cannabis deliveries, even if a local government had a total ban on all commercial cannabis activities. I understand we're not banning that activity. However, I think there would be some in the industry that would say that we indirectly, in a way, are by all of a sudden wanting to tax all their delivery transactions. Again, I just think that's out of our scope, and I don't think we should even be entertaining that. Let's just stick to the brick and mortar businesses
Well,
and
I
establishments.
disagree on that one. I think
Well-
delivery requirements, people coming to Montclair to sell cannabis and, like anybody else, got to have a business license. Same thing, food vendor selling stuff on the street. They got to have a license. They don't have licenses, but, so I think that is a requirement, but that's a discussion on the council.
Yeah,
If you'd like me to respond a little bit, just to the comment that was made by Mr. Fuentes earlier, state law allows that any person who needs or desires to consume cannabis for either medicinal or adult use purposes cannot be prevented from doing so just because they live in a city that doesn't allow the businesses. So the city has the ability to allow or disallow the cannabis businesses, but a person can legally possess cannabis, they can legally consume cannabis in the privacy of their own home.
and grow it.
Or grow it up to that limitation. So if there is a city that has a complete prohibition on cannabis businesses, and there's a delivery service located in an adjacent city, they can deliver to residences within the city, and the city does not have the ability to prevent them from doing so. The city can enforce, their delivering to, again, public places or things like that, to the ability that they have, can observe that. But the people, the residents do have the ability to purchase cannabis from a licensed business that will deliver it to them.
And this sounds very much similar to the issue regarding the point of sale discussion on Amazon sales and buying online and the amount of money cities get from that. I mean, I see that, but I think we're in a little different situation with this issue than we are with Amazon purchases. But in general, I am very comfortable with a conducive, non-burdensome, non-overly excessive regulatory ordinance for marijuana businesses. At the same time, I do want some teeth, obviously, in them to prevent fraud, abuse, and criminal activity and all that. But I have taken tours, because I know there was comments brought by Mr. Mendez, our colleague, former colleague on the council, Ms. Johnson, regarding the appearance of them, security gates and all. And I do know that at least Stizzy, I've been to Stizzy in Pomona, I've been to Stizzy in LA, I've been to Catalyst. And then I think I've been to the same one that Ms. Johnson brought up about the one that was questionable in its appearance and it being quote unquote maybe shady. I went there, sure enough, it is an established marijuana business. I wouldn't say that I would go back there and make my purchases there because it is a little bit, I don't know, a little bit of an uncomfortable process you got to go through. You can't see the person on the other end of the glass that you're giving your ID to. I went through the whole shebang because I wanted to get that experience, and I did that like 3 years ago. And then I did tours of Stizzy and see how they operate. But let me ask this before I forget my thought. Regarding security, I didn't see in here, are we requiring the businesses to have security gates at night to basically lock up their premises or no? Because I know Stizzy has that. When they're closed, they bring out these, electronic gates and it's a fortress. It's shut down. Are we not making such a requirement?
I'd have to double check on that. I don't believe it requires an external gate like that.
Okay.
There is required to be both external and internal doors. And as noted before, that all cannabis needs to be stored outside of the retail area after hours, so that there's not, so that even if the person gets through the outside door, there's still another door they have to get through. Even if they get through that into the retail area, the cannabis is still secured.
So we're requiring at the end of the night, at the end of the shift, for the shelves to be, all the product to be collected and then stored in a separate.
There's various ways to do that. What we've seen and this isn't a common, there are some cities where they do not require that, and the retail area stays the same at night as it does during the day. But a lot of them will have secured smash-proof cases, where you can see the cannabis through smash-proof glass, and then at night they bring down inside the store, they bring down that security gate so that no one can get onto the other side of the counter, so they wouldn't be able to access it in that way.
No, because I get it. They showed me everything at Stizzy, and there's a science to this, all the way down to the exact same measurement on the scale. So I'm comfortable with it being secured and it not being abused or someone skimming at the top, and their product is accounted for. And at the same time, the state imposes so much regulation on them that makes it very burdensome as a business that I wouldn't want us having to tack on any unnecessary fees and whatnot, but it sounds like we're going that way, unfortunately. But I know that there's a science to it, and it has to be down to the I don't know what the, like milli pound measurement.
If I may, it is a real balancing act, because on the one hand, as you're saying, cities that are saying these are legal businesses, we're going to allow them. We still want to make sure that they're good players, and we're going to scrutinize them appropriately, all of that, but don't want to make it so burdensome that they can't operate profitably. But some of these security requirements are actually helping them to operate profitably by making them less attractive to crime and making them not targets. We have been working on a study internally. I don't have results of it to be able to say conclusively yet, but of businesses that are subject to annual inspections, where we've, for one, reviewed their security plan and their site plan before they start construction or site improvements, make sure that everything's up to snuff, then do a walkthrough at the time before they open to make sure that they've installed everything correctly, go through and say, you should change this, change that, and provide them with these kind of not just requirements, but recommendations because, we are learning as we do these inspections all around the state. We're learning best practices that go beyond what are required by the local jurisdictions and share that information. And it's in the business's interest to be resistant to crime, to be not attractive to crime, and to be appropriately hardened in a way that doesn't turn away business because it looks like, a prison.
And just the process of trying to have the weed map type businesses, I just don't see how we could get the accurate reporting for us to be able to tax the delivery. Because they don't have to necessarily be truthful. I would hope they'd be ethical in that, but I just don't see how we can do that. I think it's going to be an unnecessary burden on our staff and our PD, and our staff and PD already have enough to do. I think we're tacking something else on them. I know they're capable, but still, it's creating more work for them. But anyhow, for now, I will stop. I do have stuff on the benefits, community benefits issue that I'll bring up later.
Okay, Councilmember Rue.
Yes. I will continue the issue about youth centers. We have in here, they basically are owned and operated by the city or governmental entity. I want to continue about the churches. What if it's a youth center operated by a church, but not on church property, somewhere else in the city? I don't know if the youth should be around this. Would that be a sensitive zone?
That could be, if that's what if the pleasure of the council. And, so again, this is the draft ordinance as a starting point for discussion. We felt in discussion that it is good to tighten that definition up so that it prevents confusion about what is or isn't one. Tightening that up by being, very specific but less limiting, that it's only these kinds are considered youth centers and anything that's not owned by the city is not, is one approach. Being more, a broader blanket approach is another way to do that, to be more specific. But again, that's something that this is a very common point of discussion with cities that we've worked with, where those are again very different considerations. As I said, there are some cities that include houses of worship as a sensitive use, whether it's having youth facilities or not. Just as a church, it's therefore a sensitive use. And there's others that don't. And there's there's a lot of variation on this and a lot of discussion in virtually every city council I've presented to on this issue. This ends up being one of the big points of discussion. So again, we're providing you with the starting point for that discussion.
And I would include in that, I'm thinking of a place such as Villa Montclair, which is a residential mobile park, primarily lower income. In their community center, they do operate a homework program and an after-school program. They are not a city-owned facility. They're not a church. I would hope we would look at that. That would bother me. I would also say, what about private daycare centers where somebody operates a daycare center out of their home? We need to think about that. Also, privately operated, maybe not out of somebody's home, but in a storefront where they may have youth centers or daycare, a gymboree or something like that. I think we need to really look at these type of uses. An argument will be made, I know it will be. Oh, well, there are liquor stores. Well, I don't like that either, but I don't think we have the ability to pull their liquor license. But I really think we need to look at where we have a lot of youth in one place during certain hours. To me, it's a no-brainer. And hopefully we can look at that and deal with it. I'm not happy with 600 feet of separation. Personally, I do 1,000 because I think that that is a better way to go about it. I mean, I'm a council member, and I was told earlier today that if any of these uses are within 500 to 1,000 feet of my facility, of my home, then I can't vote on it. Well, I can't vote on something, but we can have something 600 feet where children gather? We really need to think about this. Another question I have is on the no numerical limit. Why?
There are multiple ways of achieving a limit on businesses. And as I think when we get to the land use discussion, the presentation on that with the mapping, that will kind of get at as we start talking about all of these different considerations in terms of only specific zones where each type of business would be allowed. And then within that, then you add on top of that the various setbacks, and then you add on top of that the separation between similar businesses, so you can't have a retailer across the street from another retailer. You start getting down to fewer and fewer possible locations within the city. And then the other aspect of that is the market-based approach. That, as noted, cannabis businesses are fighting for a slice of a very small pie because there's only one product that they can sell. Well, a few very small products that they can sell. They can't have additional revenue streams other than the cannabis products or associated merchandise. So within any given market, having more cannabis businesses doesn't necessarily, beyond a certain point, does not generate more sales. And increasingly, we're seeing in places that were early adopters that started allowing cannabis businesses in 2017, 2018, whatever, and have had them for a number of years. Initially, they may have had a lot of cannabis retailers because they're the only place to go, and they're collecting those surplus sales from all the cities around them. There's no other place for people to buy. And now they're seeing the number of retailers and the volume of sales decline as other cities around them start allowing these businesses too, that the market is shrinking down. So it's based on a realistic number of businesses that can survive off of their slice of the pie within your city.
Well, I just look at the fact that there is a numerical limit on liquor licenses. And if we limit liquor stores, why wouldn't we have a numerical limit on this? They're also free market. I can tell you for a fact that if in this city with low-income housing, I guarantee you there'd be a numerical limit. If it was unlimited, this city would shut those people down. So we have a numerical limit on things we want to have a numerical limit on. And I'm not comfortable. Zoning can change. A future council can change zoning. And I think we need to really consider numerical limits. Another question I have gets down to delivery. They can deliver to private residences, and you said they can deliver to a business, a hotel or something of that sort. Would they be able to deliver to a liquor store?
No.
Is that in the ordinance?
Liquor stores are prohibited both by the ABC and by the DCC from conducting any business related to cannabis.
Okay,
They're two completely separate streams.
Yeah, I don't know that. I am concerned about delivery to business, though, because you can have people who are gathering at the McDonald's. They're there. They decide they want to have their marijuana delivered there, and they're doing that. That's where families are. I could also see a business in a mall. Do we want the Montclair Mall to have deliveries of marijuana? We need to ask ourselves that. Do we want the center where we have, say, a Gymboree? And all the other businesses around it are booming, and those employees or those customers want marijuana delivered? Is that something we should be doing?
Well, is that happening right now?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things to that. First off, I want to back up a little bit to the thing on the numerical limit piece. As noted, the ordinance does allow that the city could, the council, by resolution, if it so chose, can impose numerical limits if it wants.
Okay.
It doesn't establish one as a part of the ordinance, but that becomes something that is up to the council. And it could be established as a part, initially, it could be, that there is no limit, could come back later and say we do want a limit. You could start out with a real tight limit and then expand that further on. The council would have that option as it sees fit. As far as the delivery piece goes, again, the council can limit the conduct of businesses whose base of operation and whose primary license is within the city, but you would not have the ability to impose that restriction on businesses that are not located primarily within the city. So a business coming from outside could still
Right.
deliver, wherever it is agreeable to the other private, again, a hotel or something like that. I would say that in our experience, the only place that we've really seen this be an issue has been, hotels and Airbnbs. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen in other locations, but that's, aside from private residences, that would be, throw out a number because we don't have any, but it's, I just have not heard of deliveries occurring at a Gymboree or McDonald's or a mall.
Right. But because we haven't heard of it, doesn't mean it couldn't happen.
No, it doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but it's just not something that I've heard of in our experience.
I have a lot of questions, but we have limited time. Question I have is about the disposal of the product. Is that done in a trash can? Is that done in a dumpster? Is there a specific, somebody comes along and picks it up just like they do, the hospital can't just dump needles somewhere.
For the businesses, all disposal of product is highly regulated. There's different models of it for, the cultivation end, the distribution end, retail. Product has to be destroyed in a way that makes it unrecognizable and unusable. So it can't just be tossed in a waste can, and that is something that is inspected both by HDL when we're doing those. DCC also provides that as one of the points that they inspect for. One of the reasons that is such a significant point for the DCC is because that obviously creates a vector for diversion of product into the black market. To
Right.
say, oh, well, we just got rid of all this product. They have to be able to not just say that they did it, they have to demonstrate that they destroyed the product.
Okay, that's it for the moment. I will reserve, I have questions on the community benefits funding as well, but I will take that up.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez, you have something to say?
Yeah, questions are one thing, but I just need to say, I think it's highly inappropriate for a council member who's supposed to be recusing himself on the issue from sharing his opinions at a workshop in an effort to sway the other council members. For one, as far as the,
Well, first of all, hold on. First of all, Diane, do we have any conflict of interest at this time or concern of any conflict of interest?
Councilmember Root stated that he does have a.
I'm asking a question to the city attorney.
I only have to recuse myself if it's in
All
my
right, let me
neighborhood.
ask the
I'm asking a
question,
general question.
guys.
Your own business.
You know what, you guys, we have to be careful about personal attacks or else it's gonna turn into a zoo. So I'm asking a question to the city attorney. City Attorney Diane Robbins.
I think in regard, Mr. Mayor, concerning the general operations of the business and the information and discussions like that, there is not a problem. When we get to the piece where we're talking about the overlay zones and where these businesses may be permitted, I think that's where if we get into the detail, there will be a requirement of some recusals in connection with that.
Okay.
As a council member, my business is definitely, absolutely protecting the interests of the city and preventing the appearance of bias. So if you don't like the fact that I speak up for
Get all
myself.
holier art than
All
thou.
right, you know, guys.
You think you're so
Let's
perfect.
take a break. We're on a break.
Full of shit.
Sterling. Yes.
Okay, who's missing? Is Ed here?
Large or all matter? What, did we go to Hawaii or what? What's going on with this?
I was
Hawaii?
at San Bernardino County Transportation Authority today, and they gave me, we had Hawaiian shirt day, so they gave me one of these, and so many, huh? Day today, it's their annual thing.
Hey, we got the appointment tomorrow for the OmniTrans,
Oh,
for
good.
for Lupe.
Okay.
It takes, but I need to go to the meeting and say, it took 3 weeks or 4 weeks to get an appointment.
Okay,
Selena was able to get him to come and pick us up tomorrow.
right.
And then it takes another 3 weeks for the application to be processed. John, she was gonna pay for all these rides. The first one was from the house. The rheumatologist or
Right.
neurologist and then back home. Told the girl, I go, this process is we need. Then she said, well, under the,
I apologize.
yeah, no,
Nobody's
we
here.
want to. John,
All right.
thank you for the break. And this,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I love it.
Let's get back to order here, please. Okay, let's get all the council members back in place. Okay.
Ooh, all right.
I in there? Okay. I think we best, we just move on to the next item, and then we'll have another rounds of Q and A at this time. So let's get to the cannabis operations operating agreement.
And I'm terrible at PowerPoint, so I don't, I don't.
Our staff will
Okay.
take care of that for you.
So my name is Jennifer Mizrahi, and I am a partner at Cole Huber. We are a firm that we represent cities and districts and that kind of thing. I currently sit as and have sat as almost 13 years the city attorney for Desert Hot Springs. And as many of you know, Desert Hot Springs was, I think, the first, if not one of the first, I don't know, I get that confused sometimes, with respect to allowing cannabis in our city. And I've been there since the inception. And I gave a talk many moons ago, and that's where I met your city manager, and we kind of formed a working relationship, and here I am. So that's a little bit about me. How this is going to go, I did a PowerPoint. I'm not the greatest at PowerPoints. I'm a Gen Xer. I tend to talk a little bit. But with that, I have a lot of experience to the extent that I can tell you about some practical experience from Desert Hot Springs. I'm more than happy to if you have questions that way. But with that, I do want to get into the agreement. This is a template agreement only. It's just some proposed language. We would, if the council decides that this is the way that it would like to proceed, these agreements would be with any of the cannabis operators, and it would be by operator by operator. So again, what might be good for one operator, maybe as a template is good, but might not be good for another one. We might want to add other clauses, et cetera. So this is really a boots, I always say that, belts and suspenders thing going on. The first you have is, you heard from Mark with respect to the ordinance. It's really kind of the floor, the minimum requirements, and then the agreement is kind of more of the negotiating requirements. The reason why we wanted to do it that way is you have the ordinance, and the ordinance, you have various remedies. There's nuisance remedies, there could be civil remedies, criminal remedies, that kind of thing. In addition, we thought an agreement would work well, because there's even other remedies under the agreement. There's indemnification language and other just terms and conditions of a regular agreement that you guys have seen probably dozens of. So with that, I do have a PowerPoint. I'm kind of go through it somewhat quickly because I think Mark covered a lot. I have a little disclaimer because that's what's required. So again, this slide just pretty much says that the terms of the agreement can be negotiated, but it's a really baseline for negotiation. And just like all agreements, the main thing is that we want our cannabis operators to comply with our ordinance, the baseline of our ordinance. That's really the most important thing, one of the most important things. And then there's other terms that you would have in any other agreement, stuff like definitions. The actual term, we were actually thinking about a 1-year term, but depending on the situation, again, it could be something that might be negotiated. We require a business license. The next one is indemnification. For me as a city attorney, at least for Desert Hot Springs, I always look for indemnification. I really try to minimize risk to the city as much as possible, and that's what we provided as well in this agreement for the city of Montclair. We also require insurance consideration, and again, this is something that is negotiated. One of the things that is very important in this agreement is we do include that there's an acknowledgement that elected and appointed officials are abiding by all FPPC laws, ethics laws, any kind of laws that are laws, local law, et cetera, anything like 1090 issues, things like that. We want to keep it a very clean process, not only for the operator, but also for the electeds and the appointeds. So let's talk a little bit about the public benefit and social equity. I did hear some questions, and these are really kind of negotiated terms with the cannabis operator. I could tell you also maybe some stories or anecdotes that we saw in the city of Desert Hot Springs as well, just because I have some experience there. And these could really be anything like local hiring preferences, maybe using, or at least try to use best efforts to hire local residents, people from Montclair, to donations to local organizations, to drug prevention, education, and outreach. Again, it's a negotiated term. This would be something negotiated with the cannabis operator. This is very much encouraged. And I would say from my experience, even if it wasn't encouraged, most operators, if not all of them that I've seen, do something like this. I think the operators, especially now in the cannabis space, are really trying to put a best foot forward and be stewards of the community. They want to fit in pretty much just like everybody else. This is what I've seen over the past 13 years with Desert Hot Springs, and I should say I've been in the cannabis space legally since 2007. I used to represent other cities and actually enforcing and bringing nuisance abatement actions for the illicit growers and illicit what we used to call dispensaries, what we now call storefront retails. So it's been a while, and from what I've seen, that is something that they want to do. They want to be part of the community. They want to be integrated in a thoughtful and meaningful way. But that said, we also want to make sure that, to put their money where their mouth is, and that is a proposed term of the agreement. So the agreement also talks about a lot of the operational requirements, and a lot of this comes directly from the proposed ordinance that Mark went into. So I'm not going to get into all of these again, but again, compliance with the municipal code, compliance with state law, security requirements, and a lot of integration with the police department. So again, threats and targeting, if God forbid, if there's anything like that, we want that integration with the police department. And by the way, I'm happy to answer from my experience. I don't have the breadth of like HDL where I represent several cities, but I could definitely talk a little bit about policing and what the city of Desert Hot Springs has done and does, if that's of interest. So again, this just kind of is a slide about the operator must notify the city immediately of any modification to approved operating procedures. We want to make sure that we have approved operating procedures. We don't have those yet. There's a lot of operating procedures or operating requirements, I should say, in the ordinance. But again, it's all about compliance. Again, we reiterate in the agreement that there is a requirement that all operators comply with city permits, building standards, zoning, and just pretty much any local and state law, including licenses and that kind of thing. We spoke a lot about location and operating hours. Some of this will be spoken about as well with when Mikey comes back. We did talk about no cannabis business located within 600 feet. Again, this presentation pretty much piggybacks on to Mark's presentation. I know that this is going to be definitely a topic of discussion. The agreement itself reiterates this in a term. So not only would the operator, depending on which way the council goes with this, just kind of using this as an example for now, not only would the operator, if they were to be in breach of this, they would be in breach of the ordinance, which has certain remedies, and they would also be in breach of the agreement, which has other remedies. So again, it's used as a belts and suspenders kind of thing. We want to make sure that there's several remedies, God forbid if anything it goes wrong for the city. And again, same thing goes for operating hours and things like that. These are terms of the agreement. Again, more terms of the agreement. Some of this is repetitive, I apologize, but it's really taken off of the what we call a draft ordinance for council and planning commission review. So there's terms regarding no smoking, ingesting, consuming cannabis on site. We also go into a little bit more of visibility and storage. Cannabis products cannot be visible from outside the property. And businesses must keep all products inside secure, non-visible areas. No cannabis can be stored outside of the property. Again, piggybacking off that ordinance. Inventory and tracking, a lot of this is also reiterated in state law, local law, and now in an agreement. So these are, again, terms of the agreement that mirrors, or what would mirror, local law and state law. Some other terms of the proposed agreement, again, remember this agreement is just a template. We would do it with each individual operator. There would be no physician or anything like that on site. We really want, so again, it would prohibit physicians from providing medical scripts or anything like that on site. You would have a manager on site, and the business must provide to the city manager with emergency contacts, name, phone numbers, et cetera. Basically, we want the operator to be very much in line and with the city. We want the city manager to have their name, phone number, all of that. We want to make sure that the police department has people's names, phone numbers. We want this entire agreement is for I would say, the general health, safety, and welfare of the city. Same with the ordinance. Again, it's just reiterated now into the agreement. We do have some terms on proposed signage requirements. No one under 21 can be allowed inside. The signage has to comply with all city sign codes. And then there are required posted notices. Indoor signage must state consumption is prohibited on or near the premises. So again, more reiteration of the local ordinance. Something that comes up, I would say often is odor control. The last thing we want, I would say, and I say we, I mean, I'm here in the city too, so, is people complaining about odor. It's not fun dealing with this kind of situation. We want to make sure that there's no detectable cannabis odor from off-site. We've seen it where there's fans, super high HVAC systems. We really want that odor controlled, because I think odor, I don't know if it's more so than anything, but it's definitely a big factor, can really contribute to just kind of the quality of life for your residents, the quality of life for other businesses. So in my opinion, odor's a big issue. We want that controlled. And again, I say we collectively. We also included some terms on loitering. We want to make sure that the businesses actively prevent loitering on site. They also include no loitering signage as well. And in addition to loitering, I took that 1 second, but we also want to make sure that the businesses comply with and make sure that to post their cannabis business license and state seller's permit in their location. We want to make sure that that is very visible for everybody. This is something that we went over. Again, the business needs to comply with all permits, approvals related to local law, any kind of zoning approvals, building requirements, any permits that are issued by the city and the state. We also have a non-discrimination clause. Businesses may not discriminate or exclude customers in violation of state or federal law. And here's kind of where we get to the, I don't know if partnership's the right word, but I'm going to use it for lack of a better word. But really community relation requirements. We want to make sure that the business must provide nearby residents and businesses the name, phone, or contact information. We want to make sure that they're a good neighbor. These are just things that we all collectively thought of, but if there's other things that obviously the city council thinks of that they want to include, obviously they could do that because this is a negotiated agreement. We also wanted some kind of quarterly meetings. Again, I don't know, this might be an overreach or not, just something that we thought of. With the owner, manager, and community representative must attend a quarterly meeting with the city. These, again, thoughts that we had. Again, this is kind of the reiteration of the community involvement, and I could talk a little bit about some community involvement and just experience it if you'd like. There are some additional requirements for storefront retail. Again, these are otherwise known as dispensaries. Distance from other retailers. No storefront retailer could be within 600 feet of another. Again, we're going to talk about zoning. So if the zoning kind of changes, these would change because all of these are the terms in the agreement. So these are some of the things that we were thinking of. Customer verification and access control. The dispensary or the storefront retail must have certain age verifications, and you have to have a buzz-in system in order to gain access into the dispensary. Inventory limits, we are encouraging them only to keep inventory necessary to meet reasonable needs. Restroom controls, restrooms must remain locked and under management control. and a required posting notice of Prop 65. Another term of the agreement are some of the delivery requirements. Some of these mirror state law. Authorized personnel and vehicles. So the operator must maintain a list of all authorized drivers and vehicles. The drivers must be 21 years and older, hold a valid California state license. The drivers must carry invoices, copy of the business license. I mean, the purpose of this term would be to ensure that the delivery is really meeting the requirements of both local and state law. And again, the vehicle needs insurance and things like that. Another term of the agreement would be that the operator understands the city can go ahead and inspect the premises, pretty much at any time, be it the city manager, the fire marshal, or the police department. We want to make sure that these operators are in fact good neighbors. And one of the ways of doing that is through inspection. And again, because this is an agreement, we have default and termination clauses. I could go into those, but basically, you know, if there is a breach of the agreement, we would at first try to work with the cannabis operator maybe to correct that breach. And if it's a pretty bad breach, it also provides for automatic termination provisions. For example, if the cannabis license is revoked or not renewed, it's obviously an automatic termination. Or if the license is transferred, it's an automatic termination. So I went through some default and termination issues. This is my favorite one. It's indemnification. So if we are requiring that the operator indemnify and hold the city harmless and defend the city should there be any kind of third-party litigation. So hopefully that would really lower the city's risk with respect to entering into this agreement or issuing a cannabis license or something like that. We would require them to pay all the litigation costs. And one of the things that I like, I try to do this in even my cities, the business must keep at least, if we do get sued, if the city does get sued, $25,000 on deposit to cover these legal expenses. God forbid that were to happen, the city would draw down from that account. So we do have obviously an annual city tax requirement. We know that the agreement is a separate obligation. I do want to correct one thing here. It says operating agreement fees. I would say that there's not so much as fees, but in terms of like indemnification deposit and that kind of thing. Anything kind of related to this operation agreement, is separate and apart from the tax. So if there's a community benefit, and for example, somebody mentioned Little League, and if the cannabis operator wanted to donate, I don't know, a certain amount of tax dollars to Little League, they could go ahead and do that, and that would be separate and apart from the tax. They would not receive an offset from the tax. So not only is the license non-transferable, we don't want this agreement assigned to anybody. So again, it takes that local ordinance and gives it a little bit more beef. So there's no assignment, license can't be sold, agreement can't be assigned to anybody, anything like that. I always tend to put a clause in there, without, certain city council action. But as we have it right now, this is non-transferable, non-assignable. The license and the agreement goes with that specific operator. We want to know who's there. We want to know, some of their employees. We want to get to know them. I have a little conclusion slide, but basically it is a belts and suspenders kind of thing. You've got your ordinance, and in addition to the ordinance, you would have your agreement. With that, I'm open for questions. I could talk a little bit about, to the extent that I have information or my thoughts on a specific thing, happy to share that with Planning Commission and Council.
Okay, let's start with the planning commission. Any planning commissioners have any questions? Nobody? Nobody to start off with? We can come back to you later if you like. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
I don't have anything.
Councilmember Mendez.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Under odor control requirements, I'm sure that there are lots of specific companies that sell certain materials that are considered, good quality materials. Can we as a city require that, or we build our own approved material list that could be a specification to where like we know that this brand or this model type of a charcoal filtration system is the best, and these companies all use it, just so that way we can have a little bit of control with that?
So let me answer that real quick. So the answer is yes, the city has that kind of ability to require that in the agreement. Again, this is a negotiated agreement. And if you, I don't know what you do, but I'm assuming you're in like a contracting business or something like that, because you seem to know a lot about sewers. I don't know. It would be very, I think, actually a very good idea to have certain specs so that we know what kind of, I'm going to say level of odor control. I am not an odor control expert, but that we can do. It can be placed into the agreement.
All right, good. And then under inspection requirements, city inspection authority, are we able to do surprise inspections? Or would they be able to say, I'm sorry, we have to decline entry until you make an appointment? Could they do that? I mean, obviously, they can say, no, you can't come on the property. But
So with the agreement, because again, it's a negotiated agreement, they are specifically allowing the inspection. Let me just get to that so I don't talk out of turn. Give me one moment. Let me look real quick. I want to see what I wrote.
it was on page 10.
And it's number 9.
Oh.
Number 9 of the agreement, section clause 9 of the agreement talks about records, inspection, examination, audit. So they could inspect their books and records at any time, but in addition to that, and of course I'm right here and I can't find it immediately, how I recall, let me put it that way, and I could look after if I look in my computer. The answer is the city has the right to inspect pretty much at any time, including surprise inspections. That's how I recall having it written. Okay, yeah, I see a nod from the city manager. This was also one of the negotiating points that we were talking about. So the answer is yes. I just can't find it right now as I said, but yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I know you're the city attorney of Desert Hot Springs, so you have an experience. I know you have, how many dispensaries are there in Hot Springs?
Okay, so I want to say, don't quote me on this.
Estimate.
My city manager is going to kill me. Probably, I think 8 or 9.
8 or 9?
Yeah.
So you hear some of the discussions we had here. One was the separation, churches, parks. How does Hot Springs deal with that?
So what the City of Desert Hot Springs does is we currently do not have a separate regulation for it. Instead, we rely on state law. We default to state law. However, state law is a little squishy, if you ask me, and at least I know that we were trying to, at least here, kind of tighten that up. I know that we called it a youth center, but we in Desert Hot Springs just kind of rely on the 600-foot requirement that is outlined in state law. As far as I know, put it this way, and as far as
600 feet, is that parcel line to parcel line or door to door?
It's parcel line to parcel line.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then how about design? There was discussion earlier about designs. What is
Great question. I highly recommend, as a matter of fact, I did not put that in the agreement, but I think it would be a fantastic term to add into the agreement. Again,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it shows like the perfect kind of how this can be negotiated, right? Because I didn't even think of that. But the design elements, you know, certain design where you don't want to go necessarily to a not so great dispensary and instead maybe want to go to a better lit dispensary, we could definitely add design elements into the agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me, Mike, you're on the line right now, Mikey? Or
Yes,
Eddie?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
So you and I did talk about designs. We'll start there. Obviously, we talked about some other cities. I'm not going to mention any cities since I saw their designs, but can you tell me how staff is thinking about this, especially the exterior design, what the store is supposed to look like the inside? You know, the windows get shielded. Just tell me what's on your mind.
Yeah, so what staff is proposing, and we have had this kind of discussion with Community Development Department, is that we would require commercial cannabis businesses who come in to basically do full tenant improvements into the interior as well as the exterior of the properties, address any existing nuisances that may occur, and basically liven up and bring the property up to current code standards and make it a pleasant experience. We're cognizant that, you know, if you make something look nice and pretty, people are going to want to go there. Versus if we just allow them to move in and not do any tenant improvements, then you'll get the type of dispensary that Planning Commissioner Johnson had mentioned, that it's, you know, very icky. You don't want to go in there. So it's a staff's perspective that the commercial cannabis businesses coming in would have to do significant investment to bring up to code the property, not only in terms of building code, but also aesthetics. And they would also have to comply with all of the existing zoning standards and building development standards that are in the underlying zoning areas. So while we have the commercial cannabis zoning overlay that allows a business to occur in that area, they still have to comply with the existing standards that are in place. So if it's in an area that's in a specific plan area, they would have to follow all of the architectural standards that any other business would have to comply with as part of having a business within that particular specific plan. And as if you recall, we have a lot of in the various specific plans that we have, especially in North Montclair, we have a lot of detailed standards in terms of architectural design and what the standard would be for businesses to come in and have to redevelop. So we do have those, and they are contained within the underlying zoning for each of the respective areas that would allow for the proposed commercial cannabis businesses to operate.
And Mr. Mayor, I was also add that each project would have to go through the Development Review Committee process. And this is when police, code enforcement, fire, all have comments related to how this operational agreement should ultimately be structured.
So, yeah, obviously, you know, some of the cannabis I saw in other adjacent city to us, the sites look more dark, the buildings kind of look dark. They don't look very attractive, even they painted it and with some trees and landscaping. So we are not talking, we're talking about exceeding those standards, am I correct, Ed? Based on our specific plan, based on our general plan, based on our zoning code.
Yes.
We are gonna exceed the standards, they're gonna look attractive, they're gonna look, I mean, obviously, security will be, you know, the consideration. We're not gonna have sliding doors, we're gonna have sliding doors in the windows and all that? Is that part of this, or are you have another mechanism for security on the windows?
No, but the ordinance does specify that if there are any of those kind of security mechanisms, they need to be on the interior
On
of the
the
building. So
interior,
that
can't see
directly answers
Okay.
Councilmember Lopez's question about the security gates that were put out in one of the stores in Pomona. We will not allow those outside the store. They would have to be on the
Okay,
interior.
so, all right. And separation, Ed and Mike, you heard this conversation we had with separation of churches and other uses where there's children. Did you, staff, discuss this? Do you think there are some
Yes, we absolutely discussed it, and if you'll recall, the previous ordinance that was presented to council had numerous sensitive areas that were designated in the ordinance. It very narrowed where businesses could operate, and so we moved away from that simply because we relied basically on the fact that residential areas, for the most part, would not be participating in hosting a cannabis business, and most of those types of sensitive businesses are in fact within residential areas, so it really didn't seem germane going forward with this process. So we looked at other issues, particularly the schools and the youth center, and the reason why we focused on the youth center operated by the city of Montclair is because it is an ongoing operational feature. Other types of youth centers, except for those that may have a business license, are not necessarily static. They are infrequent. For example, churches, the church is the business, not any youth function that is part of the church. And because they may have those operations in relation to youth services on an infrequent basis, it didn't really seem to be a relevant basis for determining a separation from other businesses. And going to the market issue, this became an issue during the general plan update where some council members specified that they wanted the market to determine how businesses locate throughout the community. And so we paid attention to what council members were saying, and that is why we elected to go with a market-based process this go around. And as already indicated, the 1,000-foot separation between these businesses is going to limit the number that come into the community in any event. So that did not seem to be a reason for us to impose a limit on the number of businesses that would be coming into the city of Montclair. And as also pointed out, the council can impose a resolution that would impose limits in any event. But we believe that the market will restrict the number of businesses operating in the city simply because of the fact that market conditions generally tell businesses how many can operate and be successful. So I know that I'm answering more than what you brought up, but those are some of the issues that were raised, and I felt it was important to address them.
Let's move on with the Councilmember Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your name again, please?
Jennifer
Jennifer.
Mizrahi.
Questions regarding the living wage requirement in the agreement?
So again, these are just sample social benefits, right? So to the extent that this is something that's negotiated, it could be a negotiated public benefit.
A negotiated public benefit for whom? We're talking, well, you're talking about their employees? I'm talking about the living wage requirement on.
Correct.
Repeat what
You're
you
talking
said.
about the living wage requirement in the ordinance?
Well, I'm on the agreement section.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
It was something that, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
go ahead, keep.
But it was something that, we looked at some other cities and, okay, so what are some of the social benefits that some cities do? One of them is provide a living wage for their employees, right? So it would be for the cannabis operator employees. That is something that could be a possibility. Another kind of public benefit, and I think the reason why, I think I see your question is, why would this be maybe a quote unquote public benefit? And a lot of times living wages are coincide with a certain requirement to use best efforts to have local employees. So sometimes those go hand in hand. Again, these are things that maybe could be benefits that we would consider benefits to the community. Another could be a donation to the Little League. Another could be, some other form of benefit.
Well, that donation to the Little League, that scenario.
That's it, yeah.
Is a community-based issue. And we
Correct.
haven't gotten into that, but I know myself and another colleague wants to touch on that. I appreciate there being a local hiring and sourcing clause or provision in the agreement. I believe when this chamber was packed, it was maybe 3-4 years ago, it may be off by a year or two, when we had this this discussion. Chamber was packed, representatives came to the podium, and there was several of them that spoke about, if we're going to allow it, make sure that the businesses make every concerted effort to hire a percentage of Montclair residents. I know that we're basically going to operate on an honor system or a good faith system here, because there is no stipulation that a certain percentage needs to be X. You need to have X employees. So I know we're just going to say, please do so. My first question is, how are we going to go about making sure that they are trying to do that? Just to kind of hold them accountable, not that we're going to yank their permit or fine them.
Sure.
That's the first question regarding local hiring. But I had a completely different issue regarding the living wage thing, but go ahead.
Can I answer that one first?
Yes, please, and then I'll
Okay.
get into my second point.
So I think a lot of this really is the agreement between two parties, right? So are we going to know with 100% certainty that they're using best efforts? Maybe yes, maybe no. I think where we get into it is the quarterly meetings with city staff, right? We want to make sure that we are doing not only on the city side, the operational, so the cannabis operator side, we want to make sure that we're collaborating as much as possible. We could easily ask them, what did you do? You know, did you post this on social media? If so, can you please show that to us? We want to see how you advertise. What are your best efforts that you have done in order to advertise to the local community? And by the way, again, that comes to, could that potentially be a breach of contract issue? If they say, yeah, we gave 2 people a call, well, I don't know if a court would likely find that that's the use of best effort. If, on the other hand, they use their social media and they use outreach forums and they do truly using their best effort, during those quarterly meetings, I think is kind of when we're going to find out. During the meetings that, you know, we outreach to them, they outreach to us, you know, maybe interactions with good ones, I'm not saying bad ones, but maybe with the police department, the city manager's office, the planning department. I think the facts, to be honest, will probably end up speaking for themselves.
Okay.
So it's not the best answer, but that's kind of what I've seen.
The paragraph regarding the living wage requirement, you're telling me that that's just a template right now, it's just a suggestion?
It would be a suggestion, or I don't even know about a suggestion. It is something that we have thought about, and I bring it up as, you know, this is something 3 people thought about. You know, this is not something that the entire planning commission and the city council have taken into consideration yet. I know that in Desert Hot Springs, the reason why I thought about it is because it was required in our early on agreements back in 2015 or so, a requirement in Desert Hot Springs agreements. That was a big item.
The example or the calculation in here of $24.75 is actually higher than what fast food workers in the state are given as a bare minimum.
Yeah.
And even some restaurant workers.
Right,
But
so-
also, the industry standard for an acceptable wage is actually less than what you are proposing or what is written in the example.
Correct. This is an example. These things can fluctuate how city council deems fit. The reason why I included it as an example is because it's what I have experience with, right? This was something that the city of Desert Hot Springs did back in the day when they used to do the development agreements.
Okay, I just didn't want it something that was going to be just hard and set in stone. I think we should leave that open.
Absolutely not hard and set in stone. This is,
Perfect.
again, a point of discussion.
Now, I do want to make note, though, that the Massachusetts Institute of Technology wage calculator is the standard in the industry. In fact, it's the universal standard. And so when we looked at this particular issue, and the reason why it's a standard, because it breaks it down regionally across the country. It takes into consideration labor factors, cost of living factors, and any other element that goes into what is a required wage for somebody to be living comfortably in a particular region of the community. So when we looked at this really was the calculator that served as the standard and made sense. And this, by the way, is actually the $24.75 that is quoted in here is actually less than what it could be. Because we took into consideration what the minimum wage law is in the state of California, and we didn't want to be so exorbitant in setting this base as the standard. Plus, as indicated, it's negotiable because it is an operating agreement.
Unfortunately, though, what kind of throws this askew is the fact that there was this change in law that only applied to fast food workers and giving them an added boost above what other sectors are being paid, and I think that's what throws this all off. Your next page well, the page on the operating agreement, right after the sections, I just want to know, under city manager authority, in all of your dealings with this issue with other cities, is it customary for the city manager to be the lead and oversee policies, guidelines, changes as needed? Have other cities designated someone else or an entity or a small committee to handle that?
So it depends on which city. The answer is yes. Our city manager, we in Desert Hot Springs, the entire format is different. So our ordinance looks very, very different. And there's all different kinds. It's, not good, bad, or otherwise. It just happens to be a different system. But for example, in Desert Hot Springs, our city manager does have at times a lot of authority to negotiate agreements, et cetera. So it depends on the comfort level of the city council in delegating that authority. In Desert Hot Springs, for certain agreements, for certain areas, we do delegate authority to the city manager. It just depends. I can't compare apples to apples on this one because the system is different.
No, that's it with my questions for now, but I appreciate your time and your expertise that you bring forward tonight.
Of course.
Thank you for being here.
Councilmember Rue.
Yes, I'll follow up on the issue of living wage and a percentage of local residents. I personally think having the living wage ordinance is good. I think it's good to have a percentage of local residents or a higher for local residents, because I think by having a local resident, you get people who are part of the community. They get to understand what's going on. They are here. This is a sensitive use issue. This is fairly new for everybody, so I like that. Living wage issue, absolutely, because I don't want them paid in product. I don't want them underpaid. It's an issue. One of the ways I know some communities have done this is they just make sure that they're union operations, and that's something I've expressed from this dais for a long time, that I would like to see if we're doing something along these lines, that they're union. Similar to Stater Brothers is a union shop, works well. I would say on something like this, sensitive use, we'd want to see that. That's just what I'd like to look at. Something else I have a question on is the automobile component. I know some of the communities have a requirement, and similar to Uber and Lyft, that these cars must be in good working condition. The reason that's done is you don't want somebody carrying product that's very expensive now. We're not talking about food. We're not talking about $100 of deli sandwiches. We're talking about an expensive product. They're not just delivering it to one home, they're probably delivering it to others. And there have been instances where a driver's car has broken down. Always a chance to break down. And that driver has been, for better or for worse, I say the old term, mugged. The product has been taken, the driver's been hurt. I believe several of these cities have had ordinances or part of the regulation requiring the car be in good condition and that the PD could stop at any time and inspect. I'm not talking about just randomly harassing somebody, but making sure the car works. I would think we'd want something like that. And then with the indemnification, to what extent does that cover? The business itself might be a leased business. It could be the property manager. Would it be the property owner as well? Because the owner may not be on site, they could be far away. Something happens and then they find the owner responsible.
So the indemnification is for the city, right?
Okay.
So it's really it's geared that, God forbid, should the city be sued, litigation brought up, a claim, anything like that, that the cannabis operator, via agreement, needs to provide indemnification, defense, attorney, anything and everything to the city. And it is a lessening of liability, if you will, risk management issue for the city.
Okay. Well, that may be something then property owners are going to need to look into because there could be problems. Thanks.
Okay, Council Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your presentation, and also thank you, Mr. Lovelace and Director Fuentes for taking the time to present this issue very thoroughly. I know there's a lot of issues. Earlier, Councilmember Mendez had mentioned that the youth center was not listed on here as part of the 600 feet, and I know it's not really that important for these purposes because we, wouldn't even consider that area anyway for purposes of permitting cannabis activity. But it reminded, I agree that it should be on there, and it reminded me of an issue a few years ago. There was a dispensary directly across from the park that's right, Almahoffman, the park that's right next to the youth center. And I personally observed, some sales going on, illegal sales in the park. And I imagine, especially considering the age that's drafted currently is 10 to 17, that the purpose of the 600-foot limit would be really to target those children that would have access to the dispensaries and might also be close enough that adults might have access to those children. So places where those children might be left alone for long periods of time, schools, parks, the youth center, those sorts of things. Now, that said, I haven't heard about a dispensary in our city for quite some time, but that doesn't mean they're not here. And the dispensaries that we've identified on the map, the closest one we have is in Pomona, but I know that's not the case. I'm sure they're sprinkled throughout our city. So because you're in a unique position to be able to share with us, how have you seen these sorts of agreements affect those non-licensed cannabis? And that might just be a common sense answer, but I don't think it's something we've discussed, but I think it's really important for people listening.
So I think you bring up a really good point about the illicit market, right? This is a big one. So are there illicit markets? Probably everywhere in the state of California. The answer to that is probably yes, right? I don't know. I can't tell you with 100% certainty. I know what we do to try to, let me go back a little bit. There has to be some kind of balancing. If the city does want some kind of cannabis operation in their city, it needs to be such that it's regulated, that it's good, etc. But in a way, it can't be so highly regulated that all of a sudden you're now encouraging the illicit market. So it's this balancing, right? And I'm not elected, so I don't know how you all do that. But what we have done is we have our own police department in Desert Hot Springs, and we have an agreement with Riverside County, and I think it's called Riverside County Cannabis Task Force. And what we do is, I think there's certain members of our police who have actually sat on that task force and tried to work not just the little, not just a small city, but more regionally on how we kind of combat the illicit market. To the extent that, all the intricacies, I don't know. I'd really have to defer to our police department on that. But I will say that as far as we know that it exists. We know it exists. That said, we also know that the cannabis operators have been successful in the city of Desert Hot Springs merely because of the tax revenue that the city has seen. What those percentages are, I don't know. I just don't know. But you bring up a good question. I think that for Desert Hot Springs, at least, I think we've worked really hard regionally to work with other police departments and the County of Riverside Sheriff's Department. And actually, it's technically under the DA's office.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can respond as well. And Jennifer and Marco and Mark are not aware of this because I had this conversation with the Economic Development Agency Director Fuentes just this morning. but that discussion was addressing specifically the illicit cannabis businesses. So first off, you have to understand that the legal businesses don't want the competition. And they're going to be the first one to report when there is an illegal business in operation around around them or within the community. Having said that, what we would propose adding to the ordinance is a provision that effectively allows us to go after the illicit businesses and apply the tax to all of their revenues. We would seize their books, we would seize their assets, and we would go through this process where we would not only be shutting down the business, but we would also be applying the tax directly to their business because it is a tax approved by the voters on commercial cannabis businesses. They may be illicit, but they still are a commercial cannabis business. I know we're going to have to make amendments to our ordinance as we bring it forward to the city council, but it is something that we intend on doing to address the illicit business and to make certain that the recovery that the city gets from that would be an economic benefit to the city as well. So the earlier statement that we would be looking at $1.6 million to $2.6 million probably could be adjusted upward, at least until illicit businesses are eliminated, to maybe in excess of $3.5 million. And if they continue to come into the city, and as soon as we find out about them, we will shut them down and we will collect our tax from them.
Just one comment on that. Would that be, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You have the floor now. Go ahead.
Ed, would that also be considered, maybe like if the police were involved in that and finding these illicit places, would that be an asset forfeiture fund?
Oh, the police would absolutely be involved, and that would be, well, whether or not that falls under that provision of federal law for drug asset forfeiture, we would work with the police on that, but I would presume, yes, that would be a part of it.
Okay.
All right, anything else from council?
Yeah, so just in your experience, would you say that having the commercial cannabis that's approved by the city, would you say that that deters people from visiting the illicit ones a bit? And I know there's not so much display, so people might not even be able to distinguish between the illicit and the non-illicit ones, except for maybe the signage.
So that's a good question, and I'm going to answer it a little bit, but I really don't know. I would venture to say that if you're going to an illicit business, somebody selling something behind the alleyway or just a pop-up, don't forget these products have to be tested. So if you are going into an illicit business, I would think, I don't know, that these products that they have in there are probably not legally compliant to begin with. So I don't know the kind of product that somebody would be getting. Where if you're selling in a regulated market, the products are tested. That would be up to the consumer, I think, whether or not they would want the product tested or not. I do know illicit market exists. I do know that regulated markets exist. And it is a balance for cities and a balance for the police department.
And have you ever seen any sort of campaign, either by a city or by the regulated businesses, to encourage people to go to the for those reasons that you just explained?
Absolutely. So there's been a lot, at least in the city of Desert Hot Springs. We if that's something that you want to purchase, we encourage people purchasing from legal businesses, period. Whether or not it's a cannabis legal business or whether or not it is a restaurant that might not have their certain permits or licenses. That may be opening without city permits or licenses. I mean, I don't know, I'm making something up here, but I think there's reasons why we have these regulations. It's all for the public health, safety, welfare. I think as cities, this is what we encourage. We encourage people to comply with our regulated markets, be it, as I said, a street vendor, a truck food vendor or any other thing. This is what we encourage. And it's actually, not only is it encouraged, it's required.
Thank you.
You're
That's all.
welcome.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add real quick to the illicit market. The state of California has provided and has developed a task force to go after the illicit market. And their focus has been on providing cooperation and providing forces to those cities who have elected to allow for commercial cannabis businesses to occur in their city. So their focus has been to support those cities who have and developed a regulatory framework. There's also grants that they provide to offset the cost of having to go after illicit cannabis enforcement, youth prevention, public health and safety programs. And those are all available to cities who currently allow for commercial cannabis businesses to occur. If we were to have these ordinance adopted, we would certainly be able to start accessing those funds and start working with the, I believe it's a Bureau of Cannabis Control Task Force to go after illicit commercial cannabis businesses that are within the city. So that is something that the state is doing. However, they're just preferring to support the cities currently right now that allow for commercial cannabis businesses to occur. And just to talk on the topic of wanting to have or wanting to go to businesses that are regulated, there have been studies that have been conducted that actually look at the quality of the products that are being sold at the illicit and unregulated dispensaries. And you can find that in a lot of those products, you have extremely high levels of toxins, metals, feces, both human and animal, in the products themselves, as well as mold and other nasty stuff that's contained in it because it's not regulated and it's not tested. So when you're going to an unregulated market, you're kind of playing a risk to find out what you're going to be consuming. And so the state, in an effort to try to address educational programs, I believe that they have at a lot of dispensaries, when you go to the front, they have these prominent QR codes that show that it's a license through the state of California. You can scan the little logo and it takes you exactly to the state of California's website, the Bureau of Cannabis Control. It tells you who the name of the operator is, the business owner, the type of license, when they received the license, and what the license is for, in an attempt to try to educate the public and encourage the public to shop and patronize regulated commercial cannabis businesses.
Well, thank you. That's really good to know, especially as it relates to the earlier question about the strain on the police department. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Go ahead.
You mentioned that 600 feet is a state requirement, right? Could the city increase that?
Yes.
And so in my mind, then 1,000 feet is more appropriate, in my mind. The other thing was, if you look at some facilities out there, we talked about daycare, we talked about schools. What about areas where kids gather, like main event, movie theaters, bowling alleys, Are those, can we control those?
So I could answer that. The answer is yes, the city can have buffering requirements. The issue is that I see is, do you want to have so many buffering requirements that you're literally zoning out any kind of cannabis facility? So again, that is something, the balancing act that you as planning commissioners and city council need to think about.
I also believe that, no, we have this agreement, we have this ordinance, and if they're doing something that's causing illicit behavioral, not following the rules, this gets pulled. So they're not gonna jeopardize. I think that's something that we have here without the illicit operators, without permits.
Let's call Marco up. He may have some responses on this.
Okay, Mark, you wanna come up? Okay. I got Councilman Lopez, and I was gonna open it up to the public. I'm sorry, any more commissioners wanna say anything? Go ahead.
A quick question, comment regarding these ordinances and all of this also includes the gummies, the oils, the CBD, and all that other good stuff. Because all these dispensaries, they sell all that, right? And I know they mentioned papers and pipes, I think, earlier. I think it was Mark that mentioned that. But that falls under that too, right?
Yes.
The gummies, the CBDs and all that.
Correct. Well, I would,
These ordinances. Okay. That was
it's,
just,
it's anything cannabis related.
Ben, you have a short question?
Yeah, just a couple things. Regarding the 600-foot buffer zone, I had asked the city manager about 10, 15 minutes ago if that was something that we codified. We did in 2019. I didn't know it was also a state requirement, so we codified the state requirement and put it in our ordinance. But doesn't mean the council can't change that and increase it. And then just real quickly, regarding the issue of churches and all that, the sensitivity about those, even though, to the city manager's point, those sensitive, those churches are not in the area that where the sale of cannabis would be allowed. However, I would still say, just to put the public at ease, it wouldn't hurt to put it in there. So if it does apply, because a church can establish itself at any point, anywhere in the city at any time. So just right now, we don't have too many affected, but that doesn't mean that we may, maybe 10 years from now. So I don't think it would hurt to put it in. But anyhow, that's all I wanted to say before the mayor goes to break.
Do keep in mind, though, that if a business comes in after a cannabis business has been licensed, you can't take the license away from them.
I get it. I get it.
Okay, so, okay, Ed, did you say Marco? Marco, you want to say, I'm a little confused. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. You want a 10-minute break? Okay, let's have a 10-minute break if you need a break. All right, 10-minute break. All right, sorry about that. Okay, 8:15. do the same. I'm
Yeah.
not in the same room.
Well, come back, because I think
I am the city attorney for Hot Springs, and then I'm the assistant. I do special counsel work and special canvas work. But it is a.
I went to,
Oh, that was, we were building our city hall.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we have finally. Right, oh,
When I was
you
there,
were
when I
there
was there,
before
yes.
Panda, yeah.
Okay. I gotta use the restroom.
Anyway, so, yeah, then.
There you go.
Where's everybody?
Mr. Mayor, do you want me at the lectern or you want me seated?
Come sit down. Sorry about that. Okay, number 2 is here. Yeah, I'm gonna do it right now.
Bill wants to leave, but he.
Yeah, Marco's gonna talk, and then we're gonna wrap this up. We'll basically recommend, well, I can't say anything. Yeah, we're just gonna give our, take it back to Ed.
Turn off your mic.
Peace. Okay, so we're gonna get started. Thank you very much. So this we're gonna do. So we're gonna have some public comments, and then Marco's gonna come up and speak. So public comment, go for it. You have 5 minutes. Come on up. Whoever wants to speak, go ahead. Fine. Go ahead. Come on up.
Good evening. Sorry, this is new to me. My name is Jasmine. I have been in the industry for cannabis for more than 11 years. I started off as a bud tender before it was even legalized, so pre-ICO days. I now do management, project management, things like that. And so I just wanted to give my input from seeing I guess, the process and the progress of cannabis itself. I am a mother, I'm a student, I'm a business owner, I'm also a consumer. So I understand your guys' concerns of churches and schools and parks. And I feel like as a company and just trying to have a business in Montclair, us as business owners should do our diligence to make sure that we, work with you guys to make sure that we're not, you know, showing children these things. Again, as a mother, I know that concern. Also, let me see, what else? I wasn't really ready to make a public comment, but I felt like, this is just something that I wanted to share. I have seen the cannabis industry grow. I've seen people who come from retail, some people who come from different types of backgrounds, able to come into an industry and learn. Cannabis is not just cannabis, there's other cannabinoids. My mom had breast cancer, so it really made me want to learn more than just THC in a flower itself. I feel like there's a lot of stigma, a lot of taboo behind it, but it is really beneficial. once you start to educate yourself. Not only will it open doors for jobs, it opens doors for education, and it also opens doors just for businesses around. I work for a company called Public. We have one in Upstate, New Jersey, and we just opened one in Covina. Covina was one of the cities that did not want dispensaries. We got lucky enough to get one of those 3 licenses. So I understand how you guys want to keep it tight to make sure that everybody's running a smooth business. So I guess I just wanted to share that, and I understand your guys' concerns. And we're trying to come in here to be a part of Montclair. I used to live in Chino, not too far away. I had friends that lived in Montclair. I used to come out here, the skate park, things like that. And I just think that giving us a chance to show you guys that we want to help as a community. Covina, same thing, wants us to give back to community. We just opened 2 months ago, but I will be the one in charge of doing things like that. So if it's like us doing fundraisers for school supplies for the kids going back to school, or if it's donating to the Little League if they need T-shirts or uniforms, or sometimes people can't afford it. We live in an economy right now that it's hard to even do anything. And what we try to do is make things affordable for people, because cannabis should be something that is easily accessed for those who need it. It's not just people trying to get medicated in that way. There are people who do need it just for health reasons. But thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Have a good day.
All right. Anybody else want to get up? Go ahead, Bill.
You all know me, so all I really had to say, and I was listening intently to all of the dialogue and so forth. I opened my first dispensary in 2006 in West Hollywood. And after that, in Venice on Abercrombie, and then in Santa Monica, and then in Westwood. In those days, the only thing we did is we took a suitcase with cash in it to the State Board of Equalization, and we paid our tax. That was the only tax. But the regulations, we did a lot of self-regulations. I mean, nobody had the nerve to open an illegal dispensary in those days, because it would be a bad thing. And what we would do to integrate ourselves in the community, my Venice store, every 2 weeks, we would have 20 people out on the beach picking up trash and doing those types of things. And things were just different. Now there's so much money and so large. I understand you have to regulate it, but I just think it's overregulated. I think it's good. You see, I'm listening to all the things you have to comply with and the taxes and so forth. Well, and to give you an example, in Corona, they gave 6 licenses out. 2 of them are out of business now. And I think that's one of the things we have to look at is this, forget cannabis, just business. You go to work and you want to make money and so forth. And I think it's just getting very, very difficult. We had, our ordinance was 8 pages. Okay, but of course that was 2006, and now it's exploded. I mean, this industry, I think, is only still in its infancy because of all the cannabinoids and the medical sides of it. But I've been here for 2 years, and I want to be in Montclair, and we will do what we have to do to make sure we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it. So Marco, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Marco Martinez. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Best and Krieger. I assisted your staff with just the draft land use ordinance that would eventually come before the Planning Commission for adoption. And I wanted to just give you, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I wanted to give you just a few words about sort of the big picture of how we came up with this land use ordinance. To be honest with you, it was relatively simple. As Jennifer mentioned earlier, we both took our cue from the business ordinance. There is nothing new, nothing special in the land use ordinance. The criteria that is used to develop, that will be developing the maps in the land use ordinance, is taken from the business ordinance. So there is nothing, if you'll note what's in the draft land use ordinance, there are no development standards. It just says they're permitted in these zones, and it establishes what the map is after applying all the separation requirements, and it's pretty much that simple. So what I wanted to do is ask you tonight to, if you have some big picture comments, don't focus on the colors on the map, don't focus on the areas. What I'm urging you to do is instead focus on the regulations that you heard regarding the business ordinance itself. So if there are issues relating to, maybe we want a different definition for daycare center, or we want a different definition for youth center, or maybe you want to have staff look at the distance criteria and go maybe from 600 to maybe something more than that. I would urge you not to get into those details tonight. Instead, provide that direction to your staff, because ultimately they'll have to go back to Mark and see, well, what is, similar to how we do an adult business ordinance, we have to leave some sites. We can't say, we can't, like years ago, the city of LA basically zoned adult businesses in the middle of airport runways. We can't do that because you have a business component to this. And what I'm asking you is to let your experts do that. But having, and not to mention that when you get into the details about, start looking at the colors and the areas, we obviously, because you all live in the city, some of you have conflict issues. Some commissioners have conflict issues. And so I think we want to try to avoid that. Instead, let's stay big picture, focus again on the business ordinance aspect of it, because the staff will then take their cue from your direction on what you're giving them on the business ordinance, and we're just going to apply it to the land use portion of that. We'll just adjust the map, different colors, right? Smaller areas. You don't have to do that tonight. Having said that, what I want to tell you, the reason why we do that, and it's a little bit subtle, right? You don't think about it, but we've done a few of these now, and I think it works well. We don't put that kind of detail in the land use ordinance. In the past, we used to, the 600 feet away from this, the separation requirements, the definitions, we would include those in the land use ordinance as development standards. We don't do that anymore. And the reason we don't do that is because, as you all know, some of you are planning commissioners, some of you are former planning commissioners, you can ask for variances from development standards in a zoning ordinance. And so we want to try to avoid that. That's not to say you can't change them because they're in the business chapter. It'll take a full-blown ordinance to do that. But you're not having applicants, cannabis operators coming to the city saying, hey, I'm within 500, I'm 550 feet, not 600. I'm going to submit an application for a variance. And all of a sudden, you've got your planning commission considering variances, for 10 feet of distance or something, or there's some definition that's just a bit off in that because we put it in the land use ordinance, and all of a sudden we've created a development standard, and all of a sudden somebody can ask for a variance from it. And so that's the reason why you don't see any of that information in the land use ordinance. That's why the land use ordinance is just a simple, here's the zones, here's the map after we've applied all the zones and all the criteria that's in the business ordinance. So I ask you tonight, if it's possible, please feel free to provide direction on the business aspects of it. All we're going to do is then take that information and adjust the lines on the map. There's no need for you to get into the map tonight. And that's all I wanted to say, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to City Manager Starr and Director Fuentes. You've heard all the conversations tonight, comments from planning commissioners and city council members. Can you give us the direction you think you received that, Mikey?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council and the Planning Commission. And Mr. Fuentes will forego the final comments that he was going to make because, as Marco indicated, we will take the bigger look approach regarding the plan use component of it, the map that you have in front of you. And we have taken into consideration all of your comments, and we will regroup with our consultants and rework the ordinance as well as our perspective on how the operating agreement will shape out, and we will bring these back to the City Council at a future meeting for your consideration with those comments taken under advisement, and try to produce a document that you will find agreeable.
Okay, great. All right, I think we've hit our conclusion. We probably ran out of gas by now, gotten cold. Nevertheless, I appreciate the Planning Commission being here this evening. Yeah. And I also appreciate our consultants being here as well. Thank you very much, and we'll conclude this meeting.